This is the story of an S-class blacksmith who gave up everything for a quiet, measured life. But the swords he forged in peace later turned the whole world upside down. In the building of the S-rank guild Wings of Glory, blacksmith Sig approaches the guildmaster. He reports he and the journeymen cannot handle the workload, so he asks to reduce the number of orders. Casting a brief glance at him, Guildmaster Schmidt coldly asks what childish whims these are. He continues, emphasizing, unlike travelers who face death daily and fearlessly cut down monsters, the blacksmith sits in warmth and under reliable protection. Schmidt advises him to pull himself together and learn to cope with it. Sig fixed him with a gloomy, heavy look. Blacksmiths already exhaust themselves to the limit, sacrificing sleep. Sig clenches his fist even tighter until his bones go numb. How dare the guild leader call him and the children of their comrade privileged, spoiled. The S-rank guild Wings of Glory maintains its own blacksmith workshop. Besides weapons for travelers, it also takes external forging orders. Schmidt has already piled up a mountain of work and on top of that received planned quotas that must be met. No matter how much the workers complain, the guild head does not hear a single word from them. With a heavy heart, Sig stops and decides to resign himself and accept it. After all, Schmidt is his employer. Sig firmly reports that the blacksmiths will somehow manage this month. But instead, he asks for permission to forge a katana on the side. Closing his eyes in surprise, Schmidt recalls Sig had indeed long dreamed of creating such a weapon. Koval adds that he had a contract with the previous guild leader. He was given the right to forge katanas from the guild's materials. Schmidt brushes this off and squints. Why create an unpopular, weak, and fragile type of weapon? Sig tries to prove his point. He says the main thing is to forge the katana specifically for its owner. The guild master cuts him off mid-sentence and states that there is no point in complicating everything unnecessarily. With a cold smile, he reminds him, blacksmiths are obliged to carry out everything ordered in the directive. Schmidt orders him to throw out the foolish idea about katanas from his head. Clenching his teeth, Sig mentally repeats the guild master's words again and again. He asks if this means that Schmidt will not allow him to act independently. Schmidt is irritated by the blacksmith's stubborn persistence. The end of Sig's patience. He declares that today he is stepping out of the business and will not continue any further. Schmidt sharply leans forward, making it clear that this is not just anything but an S-rank guild. Koval calmly replies that it was the guild leader who violated the terms of the contract. He states that a whole bunch of people are already vying for Sig's position, and the announcements near the blacksmiths give no chance to think about a request to return. The main character simply turns around and leaves the office. Soon the main character stands in his room and looks around sadly. He regrets having to leave the job but still understands. With such a workload, he would have broken down even without this. Casting a glance at the katana, Sid begins packing his things into a magic bag. Having cleared the room of everything, cleaned it to a shine, and taken his katana, the main character heads to the forge. There the work is in full swing. Everyone is busy and fulfilling orders one after another. Sig looks sadly at the exhausted blacksmiths who work tirelessly. You want to say goodbye to everyone, but most of the workers are now accompanied by a large-scale inspection. Sig approaches his desk and quickly starts packing tools. A man with light hair tied in a ponytail recognizes him by sight. He shouts to the blacksmith and, noticing Sig packing weapons and tools, immediately asks if the main character is going on a business trip. Sig informs Torku he has decided to leave the guild. The man freezes in shock when he hears this news. In fear, he says they are barely managing with the new rules and now Sig is leaving too. The main character notes he has already been assured that a replacement will be found without any problems. Torku asks again, confused and not understanding what is happening. He adds, the smithy holds only because the main character supports everyone. Anxiously, he asked what to do now with Keith's weaponry. Only Sig knows how to handle it. The main character regrets that he will have to stop working with Cade. She is the only one in the entire guild who truly loves katanas. The main character aloud declares that he became interested in this twisting power and takes it with the same caution as Cade's weapon. The prospect ahead brings him no joy. Cade does not let anyone near the katana except Sig. Torku feels that the cheeky traveler will cut him to pieces with this very blade. The main character gently addresses the boy with a question. The boy asked again, and embarrassment was read in his voice and face. The main character adds that he wants to set an example for all the workers. He asks not to tolerate such behavior. After that, he asks Tokfor, say goodbye to the rest for him. The man calls Sig, then leaves the kitchen immediately, closes the door and leaves it behind. The main character freezes in the middle of the street, confused, and hangs in thought. He left the guild, so what is he to do now? He has two paths left: to look for another job or open his own workshop, but the main character does not have a license. It's hard to believe after so many years of service in the guild, everything ended in an instant. Sig wanders the city streets when suddenly he is stopped by a tempting smell. Next to him, some man is grilling meat on a brazier, goods for sale. The main character politely addresses him and asks for 2 rockbird items. The man is already preparing to fill the order, but suddenly he looks up and recognizes Sig. He wonders why the main character appeared in the middle of the workday. The man's apprentice interrupts his work, abruptly turns around holding a knife tightly in his hand. He asks if he knows this merchant. The man replies that he is indeed an excellent blacksmith, and adds that the knife the apprentice is holding now was sharpened by the main character. Kramer fixed his gaze on the knife and showed delight. The blade cut through the air too sharply. Siku was overwhelmed with relief. The knife remained intact after all, so the danger had passed. The man eagerly wishes the protagonist bon appetit and serves him meat. The protagonist nods and thanks the merchant. Leaving the meter on the square, the main character approaches the fountain and sits on its edge, resting the katana against the nearby railing. He unwraps the meat and slowly savors it, enjoying the wonderful taste. The dish turns out very juicy, but not a single piece falls apart. Sig is pleased to see how his knife is used with such caution. Suddenly, a scream rises in the square. Someone frantically orders everyone to scatter, saying that the street is dangerous. Still chewing, the main character turns around in confusion at the noise. He notices a man who is screaming wildly and destroying everything in his path with a huge sword. The main character concludes in front of him is a mad drunkard. If he does not stray from this path, he will be stopped very quickly. Barely does Sig manage to finish expressing his thought when the girl from the order that operates at night orders him to give way. She stands in front of the mischievous traveler and, sharply pointing a finger at his side, orders him to drop his weapon. The girl tightly grips the sword in her hand. She warns if he resists, she will cut him down. The merchant, his apprentice, and the main hero exchange glances on the scene and watch closely as everything unfolds. Grinding his teeth in anger, he throws, "Does she also consider him an idiot?" After these words, he suddenly lunges at her. The girl raises her sword. With a shout, the man strikes, and his opponent breaks into a hoarse, painful gasp. She manages to deflect the blow of the giant sword and gains a moment by parrying. Sig, observing the clash, sees, this girl definitely has skill. But in a real fight, she still has no experience. That man will simply overpower her with strength. Again, a counter-strike. The dull clang of weapon striking weapon makes the main hero flinch. This sound just twists the gut and seems unbearable. The main hero notes, this man wields the longsword like a club. Meanwhile, the blades noticeably differ in thickness. If the man continues to fight at the same pace, the girl's sword simply won't hold up. That's when he breaks free. Wave after wave of furious screams erupt, and he prepares to strike. The girl locks the blade, and the man jumps forward and strikes the opponent's weapon with all his might with his sword, and it breaks in half. The girl remains all alone with the hilt. She freezes, bewilderedly staring at the chipped blade, then shifts her gaze to the half she holds in her hands. The girl is overwhelmed with surprise. The wound orphan of the proud Crimson clan has broken. She shudders from the scream and falls to the ground. A drunk man approaches and looms over the girl. Realizing it was time to intervene, Sig abruptly rises and rushes to the fighters, holding his katana at the ready. Beside him, the merchant's assistant only watches, his mouth twisted in agony. He raises his eyes to his boss and asks in shock, is the main character really forging? Hastily, anxiously, he urges him to stop. But the merchant just brushes it off an indifferent refusal, and this finally throws the boy off track. He calmly assures everything will be fine with the main character. The six stands in front of the girl. The drunkard irritably mutters, "Who am I?" And with a battle cry, he lunges at his new opponent. The main hero instantly draws his katana and describes circular motion. He chops the man's sword in half. The merchant stands with crossed arms, watching intently. His apprentice is frozen with amazement. The drunkard's face is fixed in motionless, dull confusion. The girl, with wide-open eyes and parted lips, raises her gaze to her rescuer. Ordinary mistletoe gatherers wondered exactly which saber the main hero had. The boy from the merchant's shop froze, not believing his eyes. The thin blade managed to cut through the long tool of the drunkard. Sig lowers the katana and sharply turns to the girl. He notices she looks unharmed. With a trembling voice still not rising from the ground, she finally agrees. The main hero coldly calls the drunken adventurer the very one who lost all his money a moment ago. Sig warns him, if he does that again, next time he himself will put an end to this troublemaker. The frightened man falls to the ground. When footsteps thunder behind him, Sig sharply turns around. The captain of the guard approaches him and orders his subordinates to seize this burly man. The main hero sharply warns the traveler, in drinking, one must know their limit. The main hero scrutinizes his katana, searching the blade and rapping for any damage. Finally, he convinces himself that his weapon is intact, without cracks or any damage. Shaking off the remnants from his katana, Sig is already about to leave. A quiet voice behind him stops him. The girl presses her palm to her chest and thanks the main hero for the rescue. She is called just Scarlet, and she says she belongs to the Third Night Order of Mermaids. The girl wants to find out the name of the man who saved her life. She looks at him in surprise, and he waves away her concern and modestly replies that he did nothing special. The main heroine waves goodbye and whispers her wishes of good luck in her work. He leaves and the CEO rushes after him. She asks him to stop. She wants to thank him properly. Besides, she still has a few questions. But Sig does not stop. He turns around and walks away. The disappointed look on C does not matter. Attention is drawn to the merchant's apprentice, who excitedly reveals everything to the mentor and insists that it turned out exactly as he promised. The girl quickly approaches them and, gesturing energetically, asks if they know the man who cut the sword with one blow. The merchant replies he is a blacksmith, and it's not just that he is a skilled fighter, and also with his incredible katana, but look how she examines everything with her own eyes. Meanwhile, in the smithy, one of the masters approaches Torque, pressing scrolls to his chest, and asks what is so special about Sig. He adds, if it is about katana, then actually no one uses this type of weapon, so it turns out the guild lost nothing. Returning, Torkin replies with dignity. Although his interlocutor is a novice, he does not know the main character properly at all, and that is terribly little. He alone took on all external assignments, and from beginning to end, did not reveal any details about himself. After a short pause, Torque adds, Sig became famous for making each of his items separately tailored to each person. This applies not only to katanas and other types of weapons. He works the same way with ordinary things like scissors or a simple knife. If the main character creates such items, they unfailingly serve their owner and remain their faithful companions for life. For the main hero, blacksmithing was not limited to making metals. In this craft, he sought his special approach to the person who would take his work in their hands in the future. Sig breaks out of the city and dives deep into the forest. He suddenly catches himself thinking, too much time has passed since he last held a katana in his hands. The main hero pulls the sheath from the belt. He carefully, thoughtfully studies it. This blade is one of a kind, forged especially for the main hero. And since Sig is a blacksmith, he is confident the weapon must be within his power. The main hero carefully draws the katana from the sheath. This sword is famous for being disliked and for breaking easily, but as soon as the hand and blade become one, the katana can cut through even a long sword. Clenching the weapon firmly by the hilt, the main hero enchantedly admires the reflection of the sharpened blade. It seems to him one of the most beautiful sights. The main hero honestly admits to himself he is truly in love with katanas and dreams of living a life crafting them, just like once in his childhood. Little Sig carefully watches his father's work. He explains, when making a weapon, you need to imagine whose hand it will be, what effort it will apply, and at what distance the blade will strike. In the same forge, the main character now strives to forge a katana that will surpass his father's work. Once, his father claimed, he created tools that saved the lives of those who used them. Sig is no longer a little boy, and thanks to his skills, he will be able to bring his dream to life. Although the main character's village is small, it has clean water and all the necessary materials in mind. The locals are friendly, and the guild does not hold them to its rules and regulations. Sig decides it's time to return home to that place. The driver reports to Sig that they have already arrived. Sig sharply raises his gaze. Surprise is evident in his eyes. With a smile, he says that a lot of time has passed since he was last in the village. The main character spent a whole month on the road, constantly changing faces and roles. And now, after the ordeal, the trial is over. He has reached his native village of Foka. He steps out of the carriage and stretches with pleasure. Sig heads to the village elder's house, approaches the door, and knocks on it with his fists. Soon the door barely opened, the old village elder peeked outside, carefully trying to understand who had come to him. The main character politely greets him and immediately emphasizes they have not seen each other for a very long time. Then he adds that he is ill. Mayor Baris calls him by name and, losing measure from surprise, joyfully declares, the main character has grown so much that he is unrecognizable. After that, he calls the hero to him and urges, let him come immediately. The main elder and Sig sit at the table and chat with each other. As soon as the news arrives that the main character has left his job, Baris sharply stands up and loudly asks with surprise. Girls passing by the windows of the village head's house freeze in place, noticing how the old man gets lost in guesses. Sig says that a disagreement in views arose between him and the guildmaster, if one can call this role that. The main character worked exhaustingly without stopping, but orders kept coming one after another. He was not even allowed to forge candidates. The main character's main dream was to surpass his father. That is why he decided to return to his native village exactly there, where the best place for this happened. The bear doubtfully reminds him, in their village there are hardly people capable of truly appreciating Sig's works. He understands everything perfectly, but the main character does not need extra goals at all. He simply wants the blacksmith's craft for his own joy. That will be quite enough for him. Squinting and smiling, the village elder throws a phrase that the main character is an exact copy of his father. He says that the house and workshop of the Sig family still stand in place. Baris asks if the main character wants to settle there. The hero sharply raises his head and immediately agrees enthusiastically. The village elder explains to him, the blacksmith in their village is already living out his age, so he asks if the main character can become his replacement. After all, everyone would be glad if they obtained the former S rank that you will master. Sig insisted, let them trust him. Now they are capable of making not only weapons but also axes, knives, blades, and a whole bunch of other things. The list goes on endlessly. Breathing laughter through his teeth, the wine carrier boldly says that the main character, who previously only knew how to sharpen blades, has now become so reliable. Shyly, the main heroine asks not to mention this, and the elder laughs from sincere, loud laughter. Making his way through the forest, Sid comes out onto a clearing near his house. Truly stands in place. The main character opens the door. Then he enters the workshop. Cobwebs lie on the walls, dust settles on every surface, yet everything remains in its place. The main character silently surveys the room with his eyes. He immediately notices his father's katanas are not in place, and this does not even surprise him. Obviously, leaving weapons unattended would be dangerous. Sig feels a wave of nostalgia and a familiar smell of iron and coal. He takes a deep breath, and immediately a fit of severe coughing breaks out. The main character decides that airing the room is not a problem and briskly opens the window. Now he intends to inspect the living quarters in the house. Entering the rooms, the main character freezes near the door. He immediately notices the furniture remains untouched. 6 smiles glide across his face as he gazes at the children's drawings of weapons hanging on the wall to the left, to the right. Once in those years, he spent all his time here. Of course, he was scolded a lot then, but he still smiled. Now the main character gets down to business. With a crossed-out spell, Sig cuts through the dust and feels as if it has become a true force of nature itself. He gathers all the trash into bags and decides to take it outside at least for some time. Already leaving with the bags, the main character freezes in surprise. 2 girls, one younger, one older, stand at the threshold and cautiously, timidly glance at the main character. Singatu sees how similar the strangers turn out to be and decides they are definitely sisters. He notices how the girls are frightened of him. Waving his hand, he greets them warmly and introduces himself. The protagonist adds that he once lived in this house 15 years ago and also that the manager, Baris, allowed his return. After that, he extends his hand to the 2 strangers. The girls silently shake his hand simultaneously. The elder says that they noticed Zig next to the elder and then decided to come and say hello. Her name is Liliana and the younger sister is called Itra. The girl adds that they work on the farm and in the cabin. The main character freezes in amazement. He is already so young yet works so diligently. Liliana quietly and shyly explains that they are just helping their mother. She herself recently just took up hunting. The main character nods briefly, and a thought about hunting spins in his head. Liliana points to the house and asks if Sig is already cleaning. She notices that there is probably a mountain of work here and offers the main character her help. He agrees but immediately clarifies whether the girls themselves are free. Liliana happily replies that everything is fine, and Atri explains, today they have a day off. The main character calls them into the house, and very soon everyone starts working together, covering their faces with scarves so that dust does not settle in their lungs. HRA watches with admiration as Sig pronounces a spell and asks what kind of magic it is. He explains, these are the simplest charms to sweep away dust. Noticing how the main character is pulling a large box, Liliana eagerly stretches out her hand. She says she needs to help because it is clear the box is heavy. The hero calmly replies that he can manage on his own. The sister freezes in place and stares intently at the main character, trying to understand if he is really something special. When the time has passed, they, smeared with work and a full pile of cleaning, jump up and raise their hands in a victorious gesture. After all, the job is done. He places his palm on his chest and thanks the girls for their invaluable help. The main character offers to forge something for them as a gift as a sign of gratitude since he works as a blacksmith. Liliana recalls the words of the village head, and the main character is a true master with iron skills. Atra, tremblingly clutching her sister's skirt, asks who a blacksmith is. Sig explains a blacksmith is called a person who makes weapons, and as an example, he shows it to a little girl katana. He allows her to look at the blade but keeps her attention very carefully because it is dangerous. The girl drinks in the sight of the vagina, as if admiring every line. She slightly draws the katana from the sheath and fixes her gaze on the blade that sparkles. Her reflection is even clearly visible on it. The main character laughs. Atro hands him back the katana and the main character adds, besides weapons, he can create any tools. After a short pause, Liliana timidly asked for a kitchen knife and Sig immediately agreed without hesitation. Mountain flashes her eyes and clenching his fists. She says that she needs a knife the same as her sisters. Lily gasps for breath and sharply turns to the girl. The girl adds that she wants to help her sister with cooking. Leaning over, the main character praises the little girl and emphasizes that she is exceptionally smart. Liliana says that HRA will find it difficult to use a knife. After all, this product was created specifically for adults. Cigarettes, and she adds that this will require strength. The older sister tells the younger one it will be hard for her to handle the knife. Adder, disappointed, asked again if she really could not use this tool. Laughing, the main heroine allows her to use it after all. She is moved to tears by her sister. He stubbornly believes that he must make 2 knives at once and even aloud. But the main hero asks them to look at it differently, to consider the tools a gift and pay tribute to his return. He swears that tomorrow he will make these knives and bring them as soon as they are ready. Liliana boasts and both girls kindly and sincerely thank the main hero. After that they leave. Night falls over the city. Sig stops by the window and looks into the dark sky, which thickens with every minute. He sighs heavily as if the weight of fatigue settles on his shoulders. His condition is quite natural. He just finished a long and exhausting journey and immediately started cleaning. Now it is time to rest, especially since it is already so dark around. Before going to bed, the main hero begins to organize his tools. He lays everything out on the worktable in neat rows. Only when he arranged everything as usual did the main hero finally realize he had automatically prepared for a workday. Sig has not been sleeping well for several days. His body is literally exhausted to the limit. But even in this exhaustion, his hand firmly, to the point of pressure in his fingers, holds the hammer handle. As soon as the main hero crossed the threshold of his father's house, thoughts about blacksmithing continuously spun in his head. He carefully looks at the instrument and tries to weigh every detail. The main character admits he cannot overcome his own nature. Then Sig reaches into the bag, checks that all necessary material is with him. Every blacksmith works with his own signature techniques. The main hero, for example, enhances forging with magic, although some masters despise this method. But in the guild where orders must be delivered exactly on time, he was left with no other way. It is thanks to this practice that Sig strengthened his own skill. The hero utters a spell. As soon as the temperature rises, which is no surprise, the material is heated to almost 800 degrees. Now the main character needs to join the steel with the base metal. For this, he uses boron and iron oxide. With their help, Sig glues the steel part to the heated base. He heats up and methodically works with a sledgehammer, pressing to make everything stick together as one whole. When it finally happens, the main character forms a knife from the void, steadily controlling his tools. The blade is already forged, and the main hero confidently gazes at the fruit of his labor, wearing a satisfied smile on his face. Sitting in front of the blazing stove, he suddenly realizes, Freedom for him is doing his favorite work until the deadlines that relentlessly approach start to rush him. Zig shakes the sweat from his forehead. He reaches for the toolbox and takes out several items from it. The main character squats again by the fire, crossing his legs. He saw how a piece of metal turned into an exquisite creation many times, and no matter how much he watched the flame, these scenes never grew tiresome. And vice versa, the longer the main character stares, the more he is captivated by what he sees. He realizes the time has come. He pulls a knife from the stove and molten metal still drips from it in hot drops. Zig decides to test his creation. He takes a tangerine as a test object. The main character places the fruit on the table, then without unnecessary movements cuts it with the knife. The confused main character freezes before the result of his experiment. Horror pulls him because the tangerine was cut in half and the table was sawed in two. He freezes in shock when he sees this place. He nervously glances at the knife he is holding. Trembling, Sig notices he has gone too far. With his gaze fixed on the shiny object, the main character blames his own fatigue, saying it was that which broke his concentration. Such a clever weapon must not be given into foreign hands. The main character returns to his workplace by the stove and tells himself that he should work more calmly. The main character estimates the size of Atra's hand and immediately reminds himself, this girl is stronger than her peers. Next, he will prepare to make another sheath. Meanwhile, the city lives its own rhythm. A group of travelers gathers together and chatters. One of them shifts the conversation to another topic and wonders if the others have already noticed that the weapons issued by the guild have sharply lost quality. His companion nods and confirms, yes, noticed, and that is really bad news. After all, they risk their own lives. Guilds should take the lives of their people much more seriously. Saying this, the traveler angrily clenches the task in his fist so tightly that the paper is almost not visible. Meanwhile, Schmidt sits in his own office among papers, resting his hand on his face and looking completely helpless. The next day, Sinox loudly knocks on the door, pressing a package under his arm to his chest. The door opens and he is greeted by a woman with a warm, friendly smile. She looks attentively, as if thoughtfully, at the sheaths attached to the protagonist's belt. She asks if he is a blacksmith. The main character nods in response, yes, and bowing introduces himself. He says he is happy to finally meet her. The woman replies that the feeling is mutual. Her name is Cynthia, and she is the mother of Liliana and Atra. The woman claims that the girls are eagerly awaiting the knives that Sig supposedly has to forge for them. The main heroine hears him report he has just finished working with them. Cynthia notes with amazement that only one single dinner has passed. The main character unfolds the bundle, pulls out a pair of knives, and shows them to her. The woman exhales fearfully and admiringly. Ah. At that moment, the living room fills with sisters. Liliana addresses her mother and asks who exactly has come. Sig waves to the girls. They recognize him at first glance. He states that he brought the knives and offers to try them right now. The sisters enthusiastically accept this idea without any hesitation. The main character extends the knives to each girl. They greet this gesture with sincere, warm words of thanks. Liliana admiringly looks at the sheaths and carefully runs her palm over each of them. Then the girls pull out the knives, and they freeze in silent reverence, as if the sound has vanished forever. The main character cannot understand what is happening to him and asks if they do not like them. The sisters immediately rush to assure him that they do. Liliana explains, the knife is so exquisite that she could not take her eyes off it. Sig is glad that the girls are pleased with her gifts. Cynthia bursts into the conversation and throws in a remark. She has never before seen such luxurious knives. Atra asked her permission to cut something, and the woman in response suggests taking a radish. The little girl decisively takes the knife and forcefully raises it above the vegetable. The chief tries to stop Atra, but it is already too late. Not only was the radish cut, the cutting board is also sliced. Everyone freezes in shock, standing still. The main heroine nervously asks the little girl if she is really herself. Having made sure everything is ready, he explains, Atra does not need to press the knife, it is enough just to lower it. Then the chief takes the girl's hands in his palms and shows how to make the cuts correctly. Meanwhile, Liliana focuses and tests her knife. Both sisters enthusiastically fix their gaze on the flawless cuts. Sis says he tried not to sharpen the knives too sharply and asks if it is comfortable for the girls to hold them in their hands. They answer, everything here is coordinated and perfect, without any flaws. Liliana asks how the main hero managed to make such precise knives if he did not take any measurements at all. He denies it and the girl, surprised, asks, when? Sig each time catches in memory their handshake, the very one they exchanged during their first meeting. After a short pause, Liliana asks if this was enough for the main character. He answers without unnecessary words, this is his job. Swinging the person's hand in a handshake, the main character reads not only the leading palm, size, or shape, but also the approximate structure of bones and muscles. Liliana listens to Sig with admiration. He explains, having such data, he is able to do for the client exactly what will be the best solution. The older girl, again from the bottom of her heart, thanks the main hero, bowing deeply, followed by her younger sister joining in. Pressing the knife to her chest, HRA says he will cherish this gift and keep it forever. He suddenly expresses one sincere thank you, looking straight into the eyes. He watches with a smile as the sisters show their mother the knives. The main character recalls, back then his work in the guild relied on carrying out assignments. At that time, orders were accepted by employees from another department, and only after that were they passed on to the workshop. But the right tool is much easier to make when you see the customer live, face to face. This way you immediately understand what exactly needs to be fixed. The main character put his whole soul and heart into these knives. Understanding this, Sig finally feels why working on these tools brought so much joy. Previously in Wings of Glory, one could work in the same order and the same way. But the guild's fame spread wider, popularity grew, and so did the number of orders. Because of this, there was inevitably a lack of time for communication with clients. Eventually, they were completely forbidden from making executioners. The main character no longer saw any clients. The work was reduced to an assembly line and he only marked the shift, fulfilling the daily quota. It was cloudy and Sig understood. At some point, his soul had completely cooled. Seeing the main character's mood change, Liliana anxiously asked, "What happened?" The main character replied to the embarrassed girl, he was simply happy. Smirking, he added, "The best reward for a craftsman is to see a satisfied client." Sig thought to himself that he had wasted time catastrophically because he never worked directly with people. He had long wanted to get back to creating custom tools. HRS Milas looked happy. She was still hesitating, and Liliana asked if she could request the main character to do something differently. He asked her to clarify what exactly she meant. Waving her hands, the girl said she needed arrowheads. Sigrid listened to Liliana's words and recalled how she mentioned the female hunting. She said her father was a skilled hunter and she inherited it from him. Cindy gently pressed Atra to herself, hugging her around the shoulders. Liliana spoke again. Her father died during an epidemic. She was trying to take his place, but so far everything was going awry. That was why the girl turned to the main character. He asked Liliana to bring her bow and arrows. He would take one of them as a sample. She quickly returned, already holding the weapon. The main character takes one of the arrows and examines it carefully, as if studying every detail. He asks if Liliana can shoot once for him. They go outside. The girl sharply pulls the bowstring, and her arrow hits the tree trunk exactly as intended. Lily her sighs. Sig dryly notes that she is truly skillful. The girl explains, hitting the target is easy for her, but she lacks the strength to kill. She approaches the tree and pulls out the arrow. Liliana says that the main character forged very sharp knives and hopes he can make the arrowheads lighter without losing their penetrating power. Not rushing with his answer, the main character says he understands the girl. Then he adds he will make the tips today and invites Liliana to come by after lunch. She sincerely thanks him from the bottom of her heart. Returning to his workshop, Sig sits by the forge. He needs to increase the penetrating power without losing strength, and handling this is not easy at all. Yet he still manages to get to work. Soon the main character spreads out a whole box of tips. Then he attaches one of them to an arrow. The main character inspects his work and makes sure everything turned out simply wonderful. Finally, Sig can get out of his stuffy, scorching workshop. He suddenly jumps out onto the street and catches the cool breeze on his face as if nature itself is poured into it. He spreads his arms and smiles widely. The main character feels his warmed body fill with pleasant coolness, and it brings him bliss, until the tip of his nose starts to itch. The main character sneezes loudly and immediately decides that he needs to protect himself from a cold. Liliana appears on the spot and involuntarily trembles with amazement, looking at those luxurious arrowheads. Sig smiles and says that he managed to make them lighter. The girl replies she had already noticed that her old ones were much heavier, and the main character adds, now it remains to check how piercing they are. He has already fixed one arrowhead and calls Liliana to shoot the arrow into a tree in the yard. The girl takes the arrow, goes outside, draws the bowstring, and pulls it back firmly. She draws the bowstring, aims and releases the arrow. It pierces right through the tree trunk. Liliana sharply swallows air. She is shocked by what she sees. The main character asks how she feels. The girl gasps with admiration, incredible, and laughs awkwardly. Sig replies that all his former colleagues could make such things. Liliana cannot believe it. All the masters in this town are so skilled. She is convinced the whole hamlet will be shocked, but the main character recalls the elder's words and immediately notes the local blacksmith is already quite old. The girl agrees, yes, that's true. The hero adds, as soon as he settles in, he will immediately start taking orders. Z comes out onto the central square. He scratches the back of his head as he suddenly notices a whole crowd in front of him. He hasn't even had time to properly set everything up for work and people are already gathering. The mayor promised that this would bring the peasants together, but the main character feels there are too many of them. They suspiciously stare at the main character. Sig again replays in his mind the conversation with the elder in the village. He talks about how he should go out to the people in the square and meet the locals. The elder emphasized that the main character needs to take his tools with him so he won't be distracted every time someone greets him. The main character immediately agreed. This advice would really help him stay on track. The mayor promised to inform everyone that a skilled blacksmith would arrive at the square. Sig asked him not to bother the blacksmith and not to create unnecessary pressure. The main character is sitting in the square when a boy separates from the crowd and approaches closer. Calling Sig old, he asks if he is the skilled blacksmith the elder from the village spoke about. Hearing this question, the main character stops and replies, he won't judge how skilled he is, but he has already been asked to help. Then he adds that he can repair and sharpen tools and any equipment and basically everything needed, to be honest. The boy fixes him with a wary, suspicious look. He notices that the main character behaves uncertainly, as if doubting himself. Then he says he is afraid to give him his tool, but what can he do? The boy unfolds the cloth, then extends an axe. After thinking it over, the main character asked if the boy was a woodcutter. The boy was surprised and had no idea where he got that idea. Sig briefly replies, it's all visible from his figure. The boy notices the main character still understands what is happening, so the boy decides to trust him and take the axe for sharpening. The boy thanks him, then asks if 30 silver coins is the usual price. The young man replies if he does not like the result, the main character will give him a discount. The boy agrees. Sig pulls something out of the bag on his belt and settles down next to the car. The boy does not even think of moving away. Instead, he looms over the main character and greedily interrogates what it is. The main character clearly pronounces the spell and briefly replies that it is just a tool for sharpening, immediately warns that it will be a bit loud. The boy waves his hand as if refusing to take it into account. The main character goes to work. The boy suddenly grabs his head and shudders with anxiety. He exclaims, "Why is the sick so aggressively sharpening?" The main character calmly explains, "The axe is thick, so nothing will happen." The crowd gathers together and closely watches every move of the main characters, catching every word they say on the fly. The main character perfectly understands. The crowd evaluates every his move. He does not get distracted and decides to focus only on his work. Finally, Sig ends its action and hands the axe to its owner, asking for his opinion. The young man intently gazes at his instrument. Then he admires the beauty, jumps on the spot with delight, and with shining eyes drinks in every detail. He notes how sharply the axe has been sharpened. The main character smiles and asks the young man if he recognizes his skill. The young man waves his hand in farewell and replies, "After such work, no one here will dare to doubt anymore." The crowd immediately comes alive. As soon as everyone gathers, a murmur rises from all sides. Everyone asks to have their tools sharpened too. Sig raises his palms in a calming gesture and nods as if to say, "All right," and asks them to come one by one. The main character warmly lists an incredible number of instruments he used, and it turns out he truly loved each one. He is something worth fighting for. Meanwhile, in the city, Schmidt thanks his guests for coming. He introduces himself as a master of the Wings of Glory Guild. He asks how he can help his guest. The latter is Zhe from the Third Night Order. The girl says that his guild is considered one of the best, and Schmidt immediately replies that he is touched by such an assessment. Zhe adds she wants to meet someone from it. The smiling guild master announces that the best travelers have gathered at Wings of Glory. He asks whom the girl has come looking for. She replies that she is searching for the master who forges katanas. Not a trace of a smile remains on Schmidt's face. She notices an announcement that clearly states she needs a blacksmith named Sig. The girl from the Order of Knights begins to tell her story. After that very memorable clash with a drunken traveler, the wound that cut through her longsword won't leave her mind. The blade still haunts her. Every strike of her weapon echoes in her memory of what happened. Look how this force tries to snatch the katana from her, treacherously right up to its very blade. At 6 years old, the girl first took up a sword, and then for years honed her skills at the Royal School of Fencing. She is forbidden to reach for any weapon other than a sword. She understands this perfectly, yet still cannot stop herself. Zhou explains to Schmidt she has never managed to tame the desire to take the katana. That is why she came to the guild master. He informs her, unfortunately, Sig left Wings of Glory almost 2 weeks ago. However, Schmidt is ready to recommend other blacksmiths from his guild. He is confident that their skill is in no way inferior to the main heroine's and even capable of surpassing her. Schmidt is confident the blacksmiths will definitely handle the katana. She politely but unequivocally refuses. After that, she stands up. She says that she herself understands such skill is only within the power of a few. The girl approaches the door, prepares to leave, and adds the same. As she sees it, Sig has a special fondness for katanas. Turning on the spot, Zhe directly asks Schmidt if he really believes. Supposedly, there exists a blacksmith capable of making a katana better than Zhe. Shrinking back, he silently watches as the girl walks away from him. As soon as she disappears, Schmidt rages, sinks into the chair, and sharply stomps his foot on the floor. He growls, everything is decided by skill, not by the type of weapon. The guild master irritably thinks, why have they all so zealously latched onto Katten? Meanwhile, the main character is focused working in his workshop, forging weapons. The main character patiently waits, not taking his eyes off what is happening. Finally, the sound of the blade contracting is heard due to different cooling speeds. Blacksmiths call this the first cry of the blade. Zig perceives this as an incredibly poetic thing and takes out the weapon, holding it through a cloth so as not to burn his hands. The main character polishes the blade to a shine, then cools it, and finally exhales. There is nothing left to do. The main character briefly states the longer he works on it, the better the result. He is confident in the order of actions, first a coarse wet sharpening stone, then a medium one, and finally a finishing wet stone, and then a beautiful wavy pattern will appear on the blade. Sig looks carefully and thoughtfully at the beautiful weapon lying in his hands. For the first time in 2 whole years, he had the chance to focus on a single blade detail and to polish it as carefully and pedantically as he could. Yes, during his time in the guild, his own skill level noticeably increased, but he is still far from his father's level. One can only guess how his father managed to become such a master blacksmith. Smile lightly. The main character gently runs his fingers along the blade and sits down again opposite the stove. Because of this, he never managed to give up blacksmithing. After work, Sig gladly dives into the bath, and under the warm streams, dirt and fatigue vanish without a trace. The main character's house has a bath, which is generally rare for a village. While working in the guild, the main character could only quickly rinse off. He had no more time. In the water, he did not have a single minute to relax. He had to constantly chase the quota, and neither Sig's body nor his soul had time to calm down. Just an hour ago, Atra and Liliana came to visit the main character. He, stammering from embarrassment, quietly said, "The main character is all in black." Rubbing his neck awkwardly, he replied that he had not left the workshop for 5 days. The older sister handed Sig some game wild boar meat. Liliana excitedly told that she managed to catch the beast thanks to arrowheads that belonged to the protagonist. He sincerely rejoiced for the girl and thanked her for the treat, immediately accepting the meat. After he washed properly, the main character began to cook. When the soul was already satisfied, it was time to feed the body. Noticing how tasty the meat turned out, Sig was selecting the recipe. First he pierces the meat, then rubs salt and pepper into it. Now the main character will have to be patient. The meat must be left for 3 days. He tells himself that the result is definitely worth it. Liliana approaches Sig, greets him warmly, and takes off her hood. The main heroine greets her in return, and when she notices her outfit, immediately asks if she is going hunting. She nods in confirmation and says that the main heroine seems to see her equipped for the first time. He smiles and says that Liliana looks simply wonderful in that outfit. The girl suddenly blushes and blushes so brightly that her cheeks literally flare up. She abruptly changes the subject to wild boar meat and pretends that all this is done because of rituals and signs. He bluntly replies that he hasn't had time to eat it yet. Liliana Asagan, worried, the main hero Gasons tries to calm the girl and explains that the meat was simply salted. She concludes that he has already prepared the provisions. And the main character explains he wants to smoke out the game. Liliana, confused, asks again how does it look like that, as if it is kanfu. What is kanfood? Excitedly jumping up to the girl, Sig catches her gaze and shakes her by the shoulders. He passionately declares, smoked meat is incredibly delicious. The main heroine adds that preparing this dish is equivalent to true art, and the taste changes each time depending on the chips or temperature. Liliana immediately supports him. The main character declares that he is already preparing everything for cooking and calls the girl to watch how he smokes the meat. Approaching the clearing, Liliana asked what was hidden in the box. Grasping the object with his fingers, Sig proudly declared that it was his handmade homemade smoker. The main character lights hickory splinters and, while working, gradually explains each step to the girl. After that, he hangs the meat so that all the moisture drains. Liliana notes that it smells incredibly delicious because of this. The main character explains, it's all because hickory has almost no sharp aroma, instead, it gives a pleasant color. Once again running his palm along the wall of the homemade smokehouse, he walks 6 miles and orders the girl to return in 5 hours. After the specified time has passed, Liliana nods and agrees. 5 hours pass and the girl returns exactly as she promised. She immediately declares she has no strength left to wait any longer. The main character solemnly opens the smokehouse, and clouds of smoke immediately pour out. Liliana admires the deep brown shade of the meat. It gleams with reflections, and she immediately notices that it looks extremely appetizing. The main character says, 2 more days of drink and it will be ready to eat. The girl cannot believe that the dish is still not ready. For 2 days the sisters have been working together when suddenly Liliana bursts in and calls the radiant Sig. He shows her the meat and says it is already ready. The viewer happily asks if they can eat right now. The main character nods in agreement, then adds that he wants to treat everyone. He asks where Cynthia is now. Atra replies their mother is working in the neighboring field. With a voice trembling from excitement, Liliana suggests, the 3 of us gather for lunch and set aside a piece for Cynthia. The girl also eagerly agrees, saying she simply cannot wait any longer. The main character believes that this is a chance to sharply expand the circle of smoked meat fans. Pressing a smile, he nods and agrees to start the meal immediately with 3 such pieces. Liliana, pressing a piece of meat in her hands, catches its impeccable aroma. Atrona adds that it is dark brown and dense and, pausing, steps away from laying it out on the table. Sig confidently says that the dish looks extremely appetizing. Since it is already well seasoned, all that remains is to fry it in a pan. The main character carefully and attentively cuts the meat, serves the dish onto plates, announces the smoked wild boar is ready. The sisters are already drooling. Liliana again feels that luxurious aroma, and HR mumbles that the dish looks incredibly appetizing. Wishing each other a pleasant meal, the 3 sit down at the table. Examining his dish, the main character notes, the smell of smoked hickory blends with the aroma of meat. A true delight. He pulls one part towards the attempt. Meat that he tastes with genuine pleasure. An incredible aroma intoxicates his nose, and a refined flavor reigns in his mouth. Wild boar and sweet fat and rich red meat literally melt on the tongue. As soon as you bite, the juices of the wild meat spill out of the dish. The girls finally try the long-awaited dish. They truly savor it and do not hide their admiration. The dish is incredibly tasty. The meat is crispy on the outside, yet remains juicy inside. Without any modesty, Sig admits this dish turned out perfect. Liliana sharply turns to the main character, her eyes shining with delight, and says she never thought smoking could make meat so delicious. He barely replies that it is nothing like canned meat. The girl admits she cannot stop and picks up another piece with her fork. For 6 miles he stands and watches as the sisters eagerly start eating. GR also genuinely enjoys this dish. The trio continues to chew and eat. The boss is lost in memories. Of course, during work breaks he ate meat and drank alcohol, and that food with drinks was extraordinarily tasty. Yet no game could compare to the smoky game. With a smile, Hatred asks for an extra portion, and the main character rises from the table to go back to the pan and fry more meat. Liliana thoughtfully calls him, not taking her eyes off him. She notices, as soon as Sig stepped into the village, he started doing side jobs. She is gnawed by the thought of what he will do with all that he managed to prepare. Running his fingers over the nape of his neck, the main character smiles and replies, I don't know yet. The main character says before it was enough for him just to forge, but when he left the guild, curiosity gnaws at him how exactly his work will be evaluated. Liliana listens to him attentively, not taking her eyes off him. and he ends the sentence with the phrase that no one in the village will need katanas. The girl suggests they should go together to Umberd. There, at the market, they can profitably sell the hardest meat. Itra, not having swallowed yet, mumbles with a full mouth that such meat can also be successfully traded for profit. The main character freezes when he notices Umbert is a small town. Liliana says that over the years everything has changed a lot and now it is the liveliest part of the district. Hatred adds in a dreamy tone that there are also shops there. Sig suddenly realizes he hasn't been to Umbert for 15 years. The older girl states that they will set off for the city in 2 days and invites the main character to join if he wants to. The main character thinks if he does what he likes and sets a price for it, he will pave his own way and thus get closer to the dreamed life. Saryajik, named Sig, replies that he agrees to go to Umberd. Liliana notices monsters on the road to the city and asks if he can handle it. HRA is serious and tries to find out if she can rely on the main hero. Sig snorts and declares that he will help as much as he can, but immediately warns it is not worth relying too much on him because he is just an ordinary blacksmith. The older girl nods and thanks Sig warmly. Bowling, she explains, their turn constantly had to be rolled back because of monsters, and due to such delays the vegetables gradually lose their marketable appearance. Liliana is glad that the main heroine will join them. HRA sets off to tell the news to her mother. 2 days pass. Sigmites warmly calls Cynthia along with her daughters. After mutual greetings, Liliana quietly, awkwardly asks where the main heroine's luggage is. He clicks his palm on the bag at his belt, and the girl jumps with delight, instantly realizing he has a magic bag. To Liliana's surprise, the main hero offers to take the car with him. He opens the bag, and in a cloud of smoke, a swivel cart drives inside, turning right there. Closing the magical artifact, Sig proclaimed that he had not been to Umbart for a long time and suggested setting off. The girls froze in confusion, and Liliana suddenly felt they seemed to be preparing just like for a picnic. Waving goodbye to their native village, the travelers set off on the road. Liliana insists from this moment on they need to move carefully within the main hero's preparation. They stay ahead next to Cynthia, and Adder lags a little behind. The main character suddenly becomes focused. A thought flashes in his mind that a whole pack of monsters is hiding in these forests, so his peaceful walk is coming to an end. And this is his mother talking to her younger daughter. Cynthia nods. Thanks to Sig, it is easy to pass even between the trees here. Atra, jumping from hummock to hummock, supports her. Earlier they had to pull and push the cart, but now they can walk calmly and not think about anything. The main character freezes in amazement. He is struck by the carefree ease with which everything happens. They are completely relaxed. And despite everything, the main character understands. This behavior shows that Cynthia and Atira unconditionally trust him, and Liliana too, so he has no right to disappoint them under any circumstances. This is suddenly we freeze. The older girl immediately asks what happened. The main character frowns and sharply replies that there are monsters ahead. After that, he says he will go scouting forward. Liliana asks the main character to stay close to her family, and the girl immediately agrees. Zig sneaks through the forest thicket. Finally, he stops and hides behind a tree, carefully peeks out from behind the trunk. A group of 4 green wolves settled in a forest clearing. The monsters have not yet noticed the travelers. The green wolves have settled right on the road. The main character thinks about what to do next. He turns around and walks back to gather his thoughts and make a plan. The main character briefly recounts to his comrades everything he managed to notice. Liliana declares with stone-cold seriousness, the monsters must be destroyed. They came too close to the village, so it's better to eliminate them, especially since this time Sig arrived here with his family. He swears he will do everything not to disappoint them. Liliana orders Cynthia and Atri to hide here at least for now. The woman asked her daughter to take care of herself. Liliana and Sig press behind the bushes and peek at the monsters. The green wolves still do not take their eyes off the people. Drawing the arrow, the girl climbs to the start and declares that she relies on the main character, relying specifically on him. Straightening up, she draws the bowstring and releases the arrow. At the same second, the main character bursts from cover and jumps onto the clearing. Liliana's arrow hits the target exactly, piercing the throat of the green wolf. His companions, sensing danger, growled low and sprang to their paws. Several monsters rushed swiftly towards Sig. He with one motion drew his katana from its sheath. With one sharp strike, he cut off the green wolf's head so that it flew off the body. Liliana freezes from the impression. The blade is too sharp, the sharpness is felt immediately. but she doesn't have time to admire it. Suddenly, another monster jumps out from behind the main hero. It growls threateningly, showing its fangs. It rushes forward swiftly, ready to sink its teeth into its enemies. Sig, surprised, only staggers to the side, managing to notice that it passed literally close by. Meanwhile, Liliana is already drawing the bowstring and holding the bow ready. Fixing her gaze on the furious green wolf, she releases the arrow without hesitation. The strike hits the monster right in the neck and it collapses to death, managing to emit only one last roar. The main hero looks at Liliana with admiration. The green wolves are already felled and broken. The main hero approaches the girl and immediately notices she really knows how to do it properly. Sig mentally notes Liliana makes decisions instantly and is not afraid of monsters. He thinks in his head that this girl will definitely become a great guide in adventures. She replies that it is all thanks to Arrowhead Sigmate. Previously, the arrows did not fly so accurately, and even if Liliana hit the target, it was not always possible to finish off the beast. The main hero carefully wipes the katana with a cloth. The girl notices how carefully he treats his weapon. The main hero explains, these are precautionary measures against rust. To keep the blade from losing strength and sharpness, it must be cared for after battle. Liliana approaches the monster's body and pulls the arrow out of it. Its tip is soaked in blood. Sig slips behind the girl and asks if she will use the arrow again. Liliana replies, if you throw them away after the first use, she will simply go bankrupt. The girl smiles and says that the tips were made for her by the main character, so she wants to handle them carefully. She slowly wipes the arrows, demonstrating attentiveness and confirming her own words. The main hero recalls working in the S-rank guild. Back then, there were also archer adventurers serving there, but most of them operated like this. They shot and immediately discarded the arrows, and when they broke or ran out, they even demanded Sig to make new ones for them. Otherwise, why is a blacksmith needed at all? The main heroine sees how Liliana looks at her cleaned arrow with such tenderness. Smiling, he realizes he likes watching the facial expressions of people who use what he created. The main hero asks the girl, if the arrows break, bring them to him and he will fix them immediately. She asks again. The mark indicates Liliana is his main, top priority client in the workshop. The girl accepts the blessing and, thanking him, responds with words of gratitude. She promises to take advantage of his generous offer. The main hero gently gazes at Liliana. In his thoughts, he notes, somewhere in the village he managed to find his free blacksmithing. Cynthia and G return to the clearing and step out into the open space. The little girl's stomach growls loudly and she plaintively says that she is terribly hungry. Mom suggests taking a break and the main heroine agrees. Having found a suitable place, Cynthia opens the basket with food and calls everyone to sit down for a shared lunch. The sisters pick up their cloaks, inside appetizing sandwiches with spring vegetables. Looking more closely at them, Sig suddenly realizes he hasn't taken care of his own lunch, and he is already running through in his head what to whip up right now. And then Cynthia approaches him and offers a portion. The main heroine asks if she really prepared lunch for him too. She nods and confirms yes, she did. The main hero decides to do something very simple to express his gratitude. He takes out a clay pot, puts take-a-read chips at the bottom, then covers it with a mesh and lays slices of cheese on top. Liliana approaches Sig and guesses he is doing something like she suspects. The main hero nods and confirms her assumption, admitting that he is smoking cheese now. The girl anxiously presses her lips and reminds him, today they were supposed to reach Umber. The main hero asks Liliana not to worry and assures her, this time everything will go quickly. He just wants to lightly smoke the food. After 10 minutes, Sig opens the clay pot and a wonderful aroma escapes. The main hero picks up the sandwiches with tongs and takes them out from where they were lying. He lays them on a tray. He announces that the food is ready. Exchanging wishes of bon appetit, the travelers begin to eat. First, the main character takes the sandwich that Cynthia prepared for him and tastes it. A thick slice of bread, generously spread with butter, next to it spring vegetables and a boiled egg and also mashed potatoes, salted to perfect taste. It seems Sig has been eating too much meat lately, so the vegetables are a real find for him. He notices both the appearance and the taste are excellent, which immediately pleases Cindy. Atra. After she tries the smoked sandwich, Liliana adds that it is also incredibly appetizing. She truly loves the smell of cheese. The main character also tries the smoked sandwich. He likes it. The Swedish smoky flavor softens the sharpness of the salty cheese. The launch is already nearing completion. The main character notices that there is only a very short step left to the city. It seems they are almost there. Emerging from the bushes, Liliana points forward with her hand. She says the outer wall is already visible. Surprised, Sig exclaims and emphasizes, when he was at the Umberta moment, there was nothing like this even close. The girl replies that many surprises still lie ahead for the main character. The team approaches the gates and a pair of guards are waiting for them, standing on duty. The travelers have to undergo an inspection. They start pulling his luggage out of the bag and hand it over to Liliana. She thanks the main character once again for his help. The guard watches them closely. He notices the magic bag and immediately asks their names and the purpose of their visit. The main character immediately understood why so much attention was paid to his bag. You can carry anything in it. He decides to speak as openly as possible. Sid gives his name and explains that he is a blacksmith. He came to sell his katanas and knives. The guard carefully examines what a katana is. The main character replies that they are the same blades as those hanging on his belt and offers to show them. The guard's gaze is fixed on the beauty of the katana. The signed order commands to give him the blade, but the protagonist suddenly begins to beg for mercy. The guard smiles and says it was just a joke, then immediately bursts into loud laughter. Then he asks if Sig will be trading at the market today as soon as he heard that The guard says he will drop by if he has time. He wants to see the protagonist's other products. The main character notes to himself, the guard is never one to give sweet compliments. Out loud, he politely replies that he will wait. Through the city, street by street, he slowly walks forward. Zig approaches the market and freezes, stopping stunned. He notices Umbert is now buzzing with life. There is a bustle here. The main character recalls the city and sees it completely differently as it was before. He entered the market square. Sig looks around and immediately notices other blacksmiths are also trading at the market. The character walks between the rows and looks for the most convenient place for himself. For this, he gives 1 silver coin. The main character carefully lays out his goods and gives himself a signal. It is time to start trading. Evening falls and Sig's affairs go downhill too badly. Not a single customer approached. The hero increasingly loses heart and feels his hope fading. He considered it incredibly audacious to try to sell something without the support of a guild. No one knows him. Soon the time will come when the main character meets Liliana and her family. His thoughts are interrupted by a guard who approaches closer. He asks if there is any merchandise left for sale at Sig. He sadly replies that there is a whole mountain of it. The guard shudders from this. He declares through surprise that people are wasting the chance to buy an item from such a skilled craftsman. Snorting awkwardly with laughter, the main character says that he is just an ordinary blacksmith, and the guard asks him not to belittle himself with such modesty. The watchman adds he personally saw the katana with his own eyes. Its blade looks exquisite but made specifically for battle. The guard continues, noting that his words also apply to other things made by Sig. He admits he has never seen anything so beautiful, yet at the same time reminiscent of fights and wars. In conclusion, he sums up, the main character's blades are not just trivial talismans. The protagonist silently listens to the watchman. The guard concludes, since no one recognizes the main character's name, it means he is an apprentice of some famous master. Maybe he was a private blacksmith for some organization. 6 smiles in response, and he satisfactorily makes it clear that he is glad to hear these words from such a warrior. The warrior asks to end the formalities and states his name Garland. The main character accepts his words and they shake hands. The main character asks if Garland likes any of the goods. Garland replies he would like to buy the katana, but he cannot imagine how to use it and is unlikely to ever learn. Sigwin orders the guard to inspect the daggers. Having chosen one, Garland pulls it from the sheath. For a moment, a satisfied smile touches his lips. The guard notices the thing is truly good quality, so he nods and says he will take one too. The main character tells him the dagger costs 40 silver coins. Garland jumps up in surprise and mutters that it is too cheap, and the main character explains that price is the starting one. The guard decides if that's the case, now is the time to buy and reaches for another dagger. Next, Garland notices smoked meat products, same ones the main character sells. The hero replies that it is his hobby. Having understood the explanation, the listeners fell silent. The guard laughs loudly again, then says the main character is a strange guy and promises to try to smoke out the meeting places. You see Lockwood Augustin. Just then a man approaches the conversation and listens closely to their talk. People ask in a half whisper if this is smoked meat. The main character nods and hands him a piece to try. As soon as the stranger bites, his eyes flash. Exclaims that it is incredibly tasty, and with surprise drinks in the sight of the meat. The man demands without delay to buy everything at once, and the main character, choking on surprise, barely agrees. The stranger only adds that he will sell the meat in the shop. Garland points to the buyer and immediately explains he is the owner of the most popular grocery store in Umberty. Smiling, the man insists that his taste is impeccable, so the meat will definitely sell well. Waving goodbye, Sig mutters to himself, half embarrassed that Smoke communicates with the cage better than all these tangled attempts to figure it out. He hopes that he will still manage to come across someone who needs a guitar. So far, on the 27th floor of the labyrinth, the traveler slices through enemies with a wide, sweeping strike. A comrade whispers, Cade, as predicted, smashed the monsters with a single strike of her katana. Somewhere nearby, the traveler's mournful cry spreads, and then Cade horrifiedly shifts her gaze to the katana, seeing the blade is completely shattered and chipped. She must get to the blacksmith as soon as possible. The main character fixes his gaze on the counter. He notices almost all the encounters with Smoke have already been sold out. The goods have long been gone. He is convinced that no one else will come today. At that moment, a young man exclaims joyfully as soon as he sees the main character selling weapons. The young man nods to his companion, let her look at the blades. The girl called him Thor and immediately dismissed the idea that weapons should be bought in regular stores. Looking closely at the pair, Sig concludes, by their appearance and equipment, they are beginners. They even look younger than Liliana. Thor passionately convinces his companion that it is precisely in places like this where all kinds of legendary things happen. She sighs irritably and, without hesitation, agrees to quickly look at the weapons. Thor leans over the katana while she asks, is this a sword? The main character explains what kind of weapon it is and offers, I can show you, let me take a look. The boy pulls the katana out of the sheath and freezes, as if enchanted. He stands motionless and silently frozen in place. The main character decides that he does not like this. The quartet objects, the reason is not at all this. He explains as if sparks shot right into his eyes. The boy picks up that the katanas are incredibly cool and that he is seeing such blades for the first time. Smith said that he did not expect such a reaction from anyone at all. Thor's companion silently and attentively agrees. The katana really looks extraordinarily beautiful. However, it confronts the man's facts. He knows nothing about such blades, and last time he was given a fake. He indignantly silences the girl, feverishly presses her to silence, and assures, this time the weapon is 100% excellent. Thor loudly announces that he is buying Katanum. The main character immediately names the sum 200 gold coins. The man freezes and his jaw literally drops. The girl asks why the price is so high if the blade is as thin as a thread. The main character says that katanas are forged not from ordinary steel but from diamond steel. However, mastering the production of such a weapon takes decades. The girl quietly adds, she heard that this steel costs incredibly much. You can't buy powerful weapons for pennies. Exchange of glances. The pair simultaneously apologize and bow their heads in bows. Cigar softly reduces everything to everything is fine and then explains that he is pleased. The adventurers immediately notice the high quality. Thor squeezes his head and despairingly declares that he cannot gather 200 gold coins even if he pulls out all his savings. The girl replies, in 10 years even an E-rank cannot accumulate that much. The man suppresses her audacity. After all, she is only one rank ahead, so don't be arrogant. The main hero looks at his coral with a smile. Everything around is exactly like in those good old times in the guild. He keeps one thing in mind, always support newcomers. So the hero suggests paying attention to the short sword. Thor asks to see it and Sig extends the weapon to him, warning, handle it carefully. The boy's eyes flare up again and he says that this blade is also not bad. The main hero allows him to try the short sword. He ordered him not to cut anything at the counter, saying that this way you won't even destroy the thing itself. But he honestly doesn't really believe him. The boy takes the short sword and it seems, with one touch, easily strikes the stump. Contrary to the expectations of Thor and his companion, something breaks with a crack into two parts. The girl looks up in surprise. When did the boy manage to train so hard? Thor sharply replies, irritably dragging out the words, he didn't do anything at all. Only the blade is sharp to the edge, so this companion, stunned, agrees. Siglins approaches Thor and says that the short sword costs only 30 silver coins. Thor immediately joyfully replies that he has exactly that amount. The main character alone gnaws on the thought. He probably overdid the discount, but still it's worth it. Only Thor notices the quality of the katanas, the rest pass by the counter without lingering their gaze, and only Thor burns with the desire to buy those blades. The main character and the young traveler thank each other with words of gratitude. Thor gladly examines his new weapon. A comrade nearby notices they need to get to South Square as quickly as possible. Thor expresses gratitude, once again pounding words from Sarga as he rushes away, and adds, "Now everything will become much stronger." The pair of waves say goodbye and rushes headlong away to get on with his own business. The main character smiles, watching them off with his gaze, and in his thoughts catches the joy of how wonderful it is to be young. Liliana approaches him. First she greets him and then asks how he feels. The main character replies, besides Gargaland, he had only one buyer, a traveler who took a short sword. The girl remembers the guard. Sick painfully admits, people bought much more smoked meat than weapons. Atro approaches closer and asks with surprise if the main character really sold meat along with rapiers. Liliana adds that it is quite a strange combination. The young girl says that the main character cooks incredibly skillfully, so it is really a very clever idea. Cynthia bursts out laughing and adds that this way he will significantly expand the circle of fans of Sig's talent. The main character asks how the day went for his companions. Liliana replies that they managed to sell everything. She happily adds even to a good person as soon as the price becomes higher. The main character, struck as if by thunder, exclaims this question out of surprise. The girl explains the magic bag kept the vegetables fresh. Sig breathes out with relief. Everything turned out as well as it should have. Liliana advises her mother to take a short walk around the city, and she does not object. Even today they finished earlier than usual. HRA happily awaits dinner. Liliana calls the main character to join her so they can show him the numbered one. The main character gladly agrees. The team walks through the city streets. Liliana asks if the main character needs any purchase. He pauses his gaze for a moment, then replies, he is running out of spices, so it would be wise to stock up on them. After that, the girl clarifies what exactly is needed for blacksmith work. The main character assures her that he has enough of those with a reserve behind, and Liliana vows to show him a place where he can replenish his cheap taste with spices. He leads Sig through the market, confidently making his way through the crowd. Eventually, the squad reaches the merchant and greets him. He asks if they have already sold everything. Liliana nods and immediately adds that now they are buying for themselves. The seller asks what they want. The girl points to the main character and says that he likes mild spices. Then the main character introduces himself. He needs to look at the salt. The merchant nods in response and immediately places a whole sack in front of Sig. He fixes his gaze on the seasoning. He says he will buy 5 kilograms of salt, exactly the same amount as pepper. Liliana freezes in surprise and asks why he needs so many spices. The main character replies, it would be a sin to leave behind such good produce, and for smoking, they say, you need quite a few spices. Hearing this, the trader extends a look at the wood chips to the main character. He already has oak, apple, walnut, and grapevine all with chips. Sig immediately cuts in, says he will take everything, and clarifies which of the last types comes with chips. The merchant lights the vine and brings it to the main character. The main character notices that the wood is soft, therefore it will burn quickly. He concludes, such wood chips are suitable either for adding aroma or for cold smoking. Kramer notes the main character knows his business. Liliana adds that Sig prepares extremely tasty meat. There were records left in the cell. This happens less and less often. The hero pulls a piece of meat out of the bag. He offers the merchant a little to try. The merchant gladly accepts, and with pleasure saves treats for the feast. Kramer insists that the smoky smell has already soaked in too deeply and emphasizes how richly the wild boar meat tastes. He asked if there was any meat left, and the main character is already turning over in his mind the idea of quitting blacksmithing and retraining as a cook. He proposes to add 20 more parts in exchange for a discount. The seller agrees, large-scale change of goods. Turning back, Sig thanks Liliana for introducing him to such a wonderful merchant. She gladly takes on helping. The main character believes, if it were not for the girl's family, he would never have found this merchant. It is already getting dark. Her stomach rumbles loudly, and she complains with displeasure that she is hungry. The main character apologizes for taking so long to buy spices, and he notices a street vendor selling snacks. While he was visiting Umberty with his father, the squad members said that cutlet croquettes were sold in the city. He offers this dish to a tree, and she enthusiastically agrees without hesitation. Before the hero has recovered from surprise, Cynthia approaches the vendor and orders 4 pieces. She returns and immediately attends to the main character, treating him, explaining that she does this out of sincere gratitude for help with the vegetables. She does not refuse because Cynthia insists so persistently on her point. The team sits down at the table. The sisters enjoy the treats with pleasure. Mistress R especially admires the hot potatoes. Zig savors a piece of croquette. Its taste is truly incredible. Although this is just ordinary street food that costs less than 5 cents, the main character is overwhelmed by nostalgia. Every time at the end of the day, his father bought him exactly this snack. Thanks to the kindness of Cynthia's family, these memories flare up even brighter. New joy and old memories layer upon each other, and it feels as if a stone is lifted from his heart, making it easier to breathe. Meanwhile, the company rises from the table. The main character asks again, "So are we going home now?" Everyone nods and agrees without hesitation. HRA completely exhausts and falls asleep, leaning on Sig's back. Meanwhile, Kid walks down the street. She crossed the sea and left the Far East to test her own skills. She doesn't care about weaklings, she is interested in only one thing. After greeting, Kate enters the forge. She looks around but still does not find where her mark is hidden. The girl's appearance flashes suddenly and the craftsmen shudder with fear. Some of them see her for the first time. Cade confidently delves into the forge. She sharply turns to Torque to unmistakably make sure it is him. The adventurer states that she needs to repair her katana and asks where she can find. Torque replies the main character no longer collaborates with him. He resigned from Wings of Glory exactly 2 weeks ago. The key to surprise. Suddenly she grabs the man by the collar and sharply pulls him towards herself and shakes him from side to side. She must find out what happened. Torque hands over everything to her without exception. Apologizing, Kitty informs that she is heading to the guild leader. The adventurer enters Schmidt's office. He greets her on her return and notes that she did excellently. After that, Schmidt asks what exactly happened. Keat asks him to tell in detail why Sig left the guild. Schmidt gloomily stares at her. He replies that his departure was caused by the protagonist's selfishness. The guild master complains. Supposedly, the protagonist constantly begged for katanas that no one else could forge anymore. And when Schmidt asked him to shut up and get to work, the protagonist got offended and left. Key knows this for sure. Sig is a responsible person who never complains without a real reason. She is convinced that the guild master simply overloaded him with a bunch of unpleasant work. Moreover, Schmidt allowed himself to insult the katana right in her presence. Boldly and coldly, she asks, "Is it the duty of the guild leader to keep valuable people close?" She asks who will fix the blade now. Schmidt asked her to stop putting on a show and firmly reminded her, this is an S-rank guild. Then he explained that there are plenty of blacksmiths here with skill and suggested Kaido turn to one of them. She sharply turns around, gripping the weapon in her hands. Even the guild leader flinches from this. Heat angrily throws, "Katanas are not forged the same way as traditional swords. A normal blacksmith will never handle such a blade." And Kate silently thinks, that fool Schmidt doesn't understand at all how important the equipment is. He has no idea what a real fight is and no clue what goes on in the dungeons. Returning to the door, Kitten declares that he will go look for Sig. The guild foreman abruptly jumps up from his chair in outrage and shouts that this is simply impossible. He says he has a commission for the traveler from the Lord himself. Hesitating a little, she still agrees and decides to first take on the order. As soon as she finishes, she will immediately start looking for the main character. Returning home, Sig glances at the tools laid out on the table and sums up his journey. The result is disappointing. He manages to sell only 3 short swords, no tools. The main character spins a shovel in his hands, turning it with a focused grip. He believes the reason is different. In these 15 years of his absence, the focus has shifted from the Lord to the weapons, because the land has long been thoroughly cultivated. The main character frowns. In theory, residents from all the surrounding villages come to Umerd, so demand should arise in any case. He believes judging by only 1 day is unreasonable, since no one has truly had time to get to know him yet. He slaps his cheeks with his palms. Sig is already contemplating the start of preparations for the next trip. He first sets out to forge more short swords and arrowheads, and this is exactly what Liliana loves so passionately. The main character also intends to create weapons familiar to the locals, so that they themselves can see his skill with their own eyes. If he succeeds, someone might become interested in katanas as well. He notes everything on a sheet of paper and takes measurements. For 6 days straight, Sig forged tirelessly as much as he wanted. He had no deadlines and no problems with clients. The main character feels his mind clearing, as if everything is being swept away and space is being freed. He wipes sweat from his forehead. Although he loves blacksmithing, a week of work is still a week of work. After 7 days, the main character polishes his tools to a shine. He exhales strangely, deeply and brokenly. He decides that it is time to rest. With each day it gets warmer and warmer, and the main character tirelessly shuttles only between home and the smithy. Even his sense of time has dulled. Sig goes out onto the porch, stretches with pleasure, and then decides it's time to go for a walk. The main character slowly wanders the neighboring streets, and then he notices familiar figures. He greets the girls warmly and they get up from the ground. Adder addresses him, says they haven't seen each other for a long time. He nods and asks if they also went out for a walk. Liliana, noticing that the main character had indeed not been seen for a long time, concludes he returned to work in the smithy. Sig explains that he was preparing the goods for the next fair. After a short pause, the older girl says, hard work and diligence are wonderful, but the main heroine should communicate with people more often. She lights up and says that they had been worried since then. What if something had already happened to him? He laughs awkwardly and promises he will remember this from now on. He asks if they're taking care of the field. Liliana nods and confirms that their field has already been weeded. She explains the plot is large and to manage it requires a lot of hard work. Sig looks back at the open space and asks if the girls can handle such a large meadow. Nature tugs at the main character's clothes and seems to suggest that he help them. Liliana flares up and indignantly pulls her sister away from herself. After this, Sig decides that changing the environment and working with the weeds is not such a bad idea. The main character squats down and pulls grass out from under the ground. He notices everything here is exactly like in those good old days. The main character adds that he hasn't been out to the fields for a long time. Liliana, who is weeding opposite him, asks if he was ever a farmer. He replies that in childhood, before his mother's death, he did it a little. The girl immediately apologizes for her question. Sig hastens, speaks to her soothingly. It's all right, he is already an elderly man. Much time has passed, but now memories wash over him like a wave. The main character says that it wouldn't be a problem for him to return to farming, but he simply doesn't have enough time for it alone. Cynthia approaches closer and extends her hand, offering to join forces. She explains that they will do the main work, and the main character will join in during his free time. The main character asks in shock, is this how they do it? The woman explains that such behavior is considered normal among farmers. Then Sig bursts out with the question, and what do they get out of it? Cynthia replies, during harvest there is always a shortage of workers and male strength is always useful. She adds that they will feel more at ease if the main character continues to accompany them to Umberto. The main character is sure there simply is no better choice. He declares aloud that he agrees with this arrangement. The sisters rejoice, now they will be able to work in the field together with Sig. He adds, although he will not leave soon, he solemnly promises to do everything diligently. In 3 days, Liliana enters the main character's house and asks if he can help in the fields in the morning soon. He answers that he will be free the day after tomorrow and asks what they will be doing. The girl smiles and happily proclaims that the early spring cabbage has already ripened and it is time to harvest it. The main character immediately joyfully takes on the pleasant part of the work. On the appointed day, Sig meets the girls in the field. After polite greetings, the main character notices how full of energy they are. GRA says that they are used to getting up early. Liliana leads her companions to the field. The main character looks around confusedly, freezes at the scale of the work, and quietly asks if all these vegetables are really spring cabbage. The girl replies that they are theirs and that the next fields also belong to them. Sig only exhales through his teeth, noting to himself he was wrong when choosing partners for a small help. The main character carefully examines the fruit. The morning dew shines like precious stones. On the outside, the vegetable is covered with strong, dense leaves and inside hides a soft core. The hero sees such an incredibly beautiful cabbage for the first time. Liliana and Sig crouch down. The girl shows how to check the ripeness of the vegetable. You need to press the head of the required size with your palm. The best is if it springs back again. Liliana supports her words with actions. She shows everything in practice, right in action. Nodding, the main character tries himself, places his palm on the fruit and forces himself to pay attention that the head should be neither too hard nor too soft. It's like working with iron. Liliana also shows how to cut the cabbage evenly and beautifully. First she tilts the head, moves the lower leaf aside, and then cuts the vegetable near the root. The girl demonstrates the result. The main character replies that he understands everything, and he will decide to try it himself. He moves the knife closer and asks if this is exactly where he should make the cut. Liliana explains that way you will hit the very head, so it's better to cut lower. Light notes. He holds the vegetable in his hand, and finally raised the knife and held it in his hand. Firmly gripping the cabbage in his palms, he declares that everything is ready. Liliana notices that he did it skillfully. Atra adds, not bad for a beginner. The sisters quickly wielded the knives. One by one they cut off the heads. The main character freezes in amazement how quickly the girls handle the cabbage. The mentor turns on the spot and asks to be addressed exactly like that. The main character repeats her words after her. With a heavy sigh, Silenus strangely bends backward, leaning on a box filled to the top with cabbage. He immediately notices that this has already been seen. The main character feels a warm, pleasant sense of accomplishment. Liliana asks if you can put all the cabbage heads into the magic bag. This way they will stay fresh longer and will be easier to carry in your hands. The main character unfastens opens the bag, and Atra sharply throws the vegetable inside. The girl looks with surprise at how skillfully this thing works, and happily continues throwing cabbage heads again and again. Zig snorts, then nods and agrees, saying it's great that the sack keeps the vegetables fresh. Scratching the back of his head, the main character awkwardly asks if they didn't give him too much cabbage, a whole box. Liliana assures him that this is a fair payment for the work done. The main character thanks her and vows to work even harder in the future. Cynthia calls him and invites him to lunch so Sick can taste the cabbage that was just picked. The main character breaks into a smile at the lavishly set table. He notes that everything around looks extremely appetizing. Of course, the main character would never cook so much just for himself. At most, he would fry or smoke just one thing. At the table, everyone gathered greets each other. Bon appetit. Zig tries the dish and stops in surprise because it turns out to be sweet. He says the salad is extremely tasty. The main character adds, the cabbage is slightly sweet, crunchy, and not at all like the usual kind. Liliana explains that the spring harvest is always more tender. The main character feels how fresh the cabbage head is. Such products give the body real nourishment. Zeke raises a spoon with soup and takes a sip. The main character's eyes light up, sparks flash in their eyes. The dish turns out thick and slightly sweet, and the taste of cabbage perfectly highlights the rest of the vegetables. Zig calmly enjoys his lunch, while the sisters and their mother watch him attentively. Ileana asks if the main character is heading to onboard. He replies that he was planning to leave in a few days. He invites the girl and her entire family to go with him. They gladly agree. The main character trembles at the thought. If he does not appear at the fair for a long time, Garland and Tigor will simply forget about him. Before setting off, Sick packs all his goods into a bag, and his companions set out on the road. The main character noticed the entire round trip takes at least 6 hours, so he decided he urgently needs to find a way to travel faster. The team approaches the wall of Umbert. An unfamiliar guard froze near the gates. When he announces all the necessary information, Sig politely asks where Garland is located. The guard replies that he is patrolling the streets and allows them to enter the city. Thanking him, the main character moves on. You wanted to greet Garland, but he is the commander of the guard, so it is not fitting for him to stand constantly by the gates. The main character waves goodbye to Cynthia and her daughters. He walks through the market, crossing the square. I am making my way to this old place. The main character does not intend to change the location of the shops so as not to confuse the customers. Sig arranges his goods in their places. Suddenly his gaze catches something that immediately draws attention. He turns sharply and sees a whole line of people patiently waiting. The main character stops in surprise, but then decides to ask what exactly they are waiting for, and although it may seem awkward if the visitors are not waiting for him, the main character politely addresses the first customer. Are they waiting for him? The customer nods and adds, this whole line has been waiting for him. Zig shifts his gaze to the crowd and freezes in shock. He finally understands where all these people come from. Thank you for watching. Write your impressions in the comments. If you liked the story, like and subscribe. See you soon. As soon as Sig opened the blacksmith stall, buyers were already waiting near him, brought by the rumor about the unusual goods. Welcoming the first customers, the young blacksmith was surprised at how quickly Thor and Garland spread the news about him. Instead of weapons, Sig immediately laid out several jars and packages of his own products before the visitor. Next to the daggers and swords, the blacksmith offered a travel snack, and the buyer without hesitation demanded dried meat. Such a response made Sig only force a smile, as the weapons again interested no one. He sold the first jar of smoked meat for 8 silver coins, finally turning the forge into a delicatessen shop. When Sig tried to remind about his blacksmith work, the buyer was already thinking only about the next portion of smoked meat. The visitor politely apologized for the delay and reached for the goods, leaving no chance for the weapons. Even refusing the katana and dagger because of his own spear, the man immediately ordered 2 packages of meat and smoked powder. The next client also asked for smoked bacon, and Sig resigned himself to another order outside his specialty. Barely opening the jar of legendary meat, the buyer was already shining with impatience and did not hide his delight. The deep flavor moved the man so much that he began to boast about the find in front of the entire market. The rumor about smoked delicacies gathered a long queue, among which was even a traveling merchant of exquisite food. The pressure from new gourmets was endless, and each demanded nuts, meat, or another jar of delicacies. Sig tried to turn the crowd back to the swords, but the people needed a smokehouse, not a blacksmith's workshop. Soon a sign announced a complete sale of smoked goods, while the katanas lay untouched. A successful day brought Sig a good profit, but not a single sold sword confirmed his true craft. Rows of unclaimed blades caught the attention of the last stranger, who carefully examined the blacksmith's work. Standing by the empty stall, Sig could not rejoice in the earnings, for his weapons again proved to be unwanted. When a new visitor approached, the blacksmith warned about the absence of smoked goods, but the man came not for food at all. The calm stranger in Eastern attire looked at Sig with barely noticeable interest. The unusual attention confused the young man, and even his usual greeting sounded uncertain. The visitor noticed he was the first buyer of the day without a craving for delicacies, and Sig acknowledged the sad pattern. Finally, the man asked to see the swords, and attention for the first time all day shifted to the blacksmith's goods. Seeing the katanas, the guest recognized the weapons of his far eastern homeland, which immediately intrigued Sig. The blacksmith handed him a blade for inspection, and the stranger accepted it with relieved gratitude. It was enough for the man to take the katana for his relaxed posture to straighten and all frivolity to disappear. Examining the blade, the guest felt as if the master from a foreign kingdom was deliberately testing his knowledge. The stranger abruptly drew the blade from the sheath, and the usual inspection instantly became a serious test. The shine of the steel brought the man back to memories of harsh training among the trees of a distant homeland. From the familiar feeling of the weapon, the traveler was seized by a tremor, and the former smile gave way to concentration. Carefully touching the blade with a glove, he checked the edge and finally allowed himself a satisfied smile. The guest admitted that he had been watching the forge because of rumors about katanas, and the meticulous work of Sig fully met expectations. The skill of the local blacksmith impressed the traveler, who did not expect to see weapons of such quality in the kingdom. In his assessment, this katana belonged to the best specimens, which even in the Far East were rare. Sig received the high praise surprisingly casually, which only further stunned the connoisseur. The traveler assumed that the young man had studied in the Far East, because otherwise his mastery of this tradition seemed impossible. Sig denied traveling and explained that the craft was passed down to him by his father, whose level he still aspired to reach. The mention of the mentor made the guest clarify whether the young man's father came from that same distant land. Hearing the name Ardluj, the traveler recognized the famous blacksmith from the east and immediately took Sig more seriously. The guest weighed the katana in his hand once again, confirming that Ardluj's reputation as a skilled craftsman was well-deserved. But the thought of a master capable of surpassing even this blade led the traveler to a much more important memory. According to him, among all the blacksmiths he knew, only one person stood higher, and Sig immediately became wary. The young man suddenly stepped forward, because the hint about the unknown master could reveal the truth about his father's past. Throwing caution aside, Sig demanded any information about Ardluj, showing how painful this topic was. The traveler slowed his enthusiasm and warned that haste would not allow separating useful facts from rumors. Returning the katana to its owner, the stranger temporarily postponed the conversation about the father and suggested moving on to business. The man introduced himself as Ibuki Murasame, a merchant from the Far East, and in response heard the name of the blacksmith Sig. Sig offered to sell swords for Ibuki, but the merchant immediately asked why the young man would need someone else's weapons. Ibuki revealed his true intention. He wanted to distribute swords throughout the kingdom that Sig himself would later make. Ibuki explained that without local competitors, he would be able to monopolize the sale of Siga's swords and earn a large profit. In the Far East, the best blacksmiths served the shogunate and daimyo, so a powerless traveling merchant had no access to their weapons. Having found a skilled master right in the kingdom, Ibuki again offered Siga to sell him his blades. Siga agreed because the experienced admirer of Eastern culture seemed like a person who would not devalue his work. Hearing the agreement, Ibuki joyfully shook the young man's hands, and the unexpected partnership immediately became a reality. For 2 swords, Siga named the price of 200 gold coins, and the merchant accepted the condition without hesitation. The absence of bargaining surprised the blacksmith, who expected the experienced buyer to try to lower the price of the unpopular goods. Ibuki assured that a lower payment would demean Siga himself, finally winning the master's favor. A full bag of gold confirmed the merchant's wealth earned from transporting rare Far Eastern goods. Looking at the stall, Ibuki wondered why a blacksmith of such skill had not yet become famous throughout the city. Siga admitted that after returning, he worked exclusively for the Mermaid Blacksmith Guild for 15 years. The young man's experience impressed Ibuki, while Siga himself only envied the adventures of the members of the Adventurers Guild. The merchant bought knives, daggers, and scissors, and for the next meeting ordered a katana and 10 daggers. Sig agreed to fulfill the large order in 2 weeks, although he doubted that Ibuki would sell everything so quickly. The confident buyer relied on his own talent to sell the goods and calmly said goodbye to his partner. Watching Ibuki leave, Sig decided not to lecture the professional merchant about his work anymore. Soon Garland returned to the stall, and Sig happily informed him about the first real sale of swords. From the description, Garland immediately recognized the traveling merchant Ibuki, whom he had accidentally directed to the forge. The merchant noticed Garland's dagger and asked so persistently about the craftsman that the warrior eventually named Sig. The blacksmith thanked him for the useful acquaintance, and Garland sincerely rejoiced that he had brought a good client to his friend. Noticing the empty jars, the warrior inquired about smoked treats, but the entire stock had already been taken by the crowd. For help with Ibuki, Sig gave Garland a piece of smoked cheese, and the gift instantly restored his good mood. The satisfied warrior left with the cheese, leaving the blacksmith alone again by the almost empty stall. The next passerby recognized Sig not as a blacksmith, but as the legendary master of the smokehouse. The surprised young man quickly realized that the street vendor had also heard rumors about his food product. The old man proudly admitted that he was the one who spread these stories, and Sig finally found the culprit of the hype. The vendor praised the profitable day and asked to set aside a wholesale batch of smoked goods for him next time. After the market hustle, Sig returned to his usual life, and new travelers were already moving through the city. The acquired order gave the blacksmith a clear goal, and he began making swords specifically for Ibuki. Working on the heated steel, Sig forged for the first time not for the guild, but for a future joint sale. The quiet forge became the beginning of a partnership that promised to unite Sig's craftsmanship with Ibuki's trade for a long time. Meanwhile, Ibuki again recalled the moment when Sig's blade reminded him of a sword from the past. Behind the outward calm, the merchant hid genuine astonishment at the work he had seen. As soon as the katana came out of the sheath, Ibuki noticed a distinct temper line on its surface, which he did not expect to find here. An ancient Eastern legend claimed that a blade brought to perfection shows the future to its owner. In the katana's shine, Ibuki envisioned the silhouette of a majestic castle, and the usual inspection suddenly took on a chilling meaning. The merchant found it hard to believe that a master from the kingdom could create a weapon worthy of such a legend. Due to the lack of confirmation in the past, Ibuki tried to convince himself that the unusual vision was just imagination. But the image of the warrior cutting through the darkness with the blade's glow did not leave him and turned doubt into anxiety. In solitude, Ibuki admitted that Shig's talent was not just rare, but truly terrifying. Finishing the new sword, Shig polished the steel and carved an East Asian inscription on it. Examining the smooth blade on the table, the blacksmith decided he had found a good place for a short break. A sip of water in the yard reminded the exhausted Shig how stifling the work in the forge had become. A sudden noise in the yard alerted the young man, but his usual gear remained in the back room. Having no time to change, Shig grabbed the unfinished sword and went out to meet the possible beast. Instead of a monster, an archer named Liliana appeared before him, greeting the blacksmith right from the forest path. The girl immediately noticed the new blade, and Shig explained that the blade was already ready, although the entire weapon was not yet. He showed that the sword needed polishing, a guard, a handle, and a sheath, and Liliana appreciated the complexity of the craft. The archer came not because of the blacksmith's work, but to ask for help with a large prey that she could not carry herself. The tired Sig agreed to help Liliana, taking the unexpected task as a welcome change of pace. Before leaving, Sig attached the unfinished sword to his belt so as not to be unarmed in the forest. Liliana led him to a huge deer that had lived about 8 years and was an exceptional prey. The arrow made by Sig precisely struck a vital spot, although the archer tried not to boast about the success. Following the blacksmith's advice, they hung the carcass to drain the blood and not spoil the taste and preservation of the meat. Liliana opened the hide, and Sig began helping with processing the giant prey. Due to prolonged bleeding, the internal organs were no longer suitable for food, so they had to be set aside. They decided to soak the huge hide in the lake and carry the rest of the carcass using a magical bag. The road led them to a quiet lake under the mountain ridge, where Liliana could finish the work. The calm water reminded Sig of old times when he swam and fished here far from the forge. Liliana asked for help to take the hide the next day and promised to reward him with a larger share of the meat. Already at home, Sig evaluated the massive piece of thigh weighing about 10 kilograms and pondered its purpose. The quality of the venison suggested to the blacksmith to smoke it, as losing such a product would be a real waste. Sig proposed without extra expenses to smoke other pieces for Liliana as well, while working on his share. The archer accepted the help and asked the master to choose the best method for each of the 4 cuts himself. Having assessed the tenderloin, belly, shin, and thigh, Sig chose the latter for juicy smoked steaks. Instead, he advised turning the tenderloin into dried meat to preserve its tenderness. The mention of the future delicacy instantly lit up Liliana's eyes and made her forget about fatigue. Sig confidently took the preparation upon himself, promising a result worth waiting for. Remaining in the kitchen, the blacksmith began with salting, on which all further processing of the venison depended. He generously rubbed the meat with salt and a small amount of brown sugar, creating a base for curing. The thigh received a mixture of pepper, paprika, garlic, and onion powder, after which the spices tightly enveloped the meat. Sig left the tenderloin in a mucus bag for 3 days, while the larger piece was to be cured for 5. When the time passed, the master took out the salted meat and began to wash off the excess salt. Having removed the surface moisture, Sig hung the cuts in the smokehouse, where the smoke was to determine their final flavor. A dark crust gradually covered the venison with an appetizing color and confirmed that the process was going correctly. Even waiting by the smokehouse seemed to Sig a luxurious rest from constant blacksmith work. When the dried meat matured, the master cut off the first strip and focused on checking the result. The smoke softened the wild character of the venison without overpowering it, and Sig already imagined this taste with beer or whiskey. After a few days, the finished smoked ham pleasantly surprised the blacksmith with its weight, and he decided to invite Liliana for a tasting. The girl ran to the smell even before the invitation, barely restraining her impatience by the kitchen door. Sig brought out the promised smoked deer and turned an ordinary meeting into a long-awaited treat. For the first try, he served Liliana a strip of dried tenderloin and advised tearing it along the fibers. The rich and expressive taste captivated the archer, and Sig good-naturedly remarked that her gastronomic tastes were maturing quickly. Since both had not yet eaten lunch, Liliana suggested adding the smoked ham to the treat. Sig agreed to join and led the girl to the table where they could quietly eat together. While the host was preparing the meat, Liliana set the dishes and helped turn the kitchen into a cozy dining room. Liliana's mother returned home, and the aroma from the kitchen immediately caught her attention. Sig explained that he had brought smoked venison, and Liliana invited her mother to sit with everyone. The cut showed a moist pink center under a dense crust, which was not easy to preserve after smoking. The first piece absorbed the spices and smoked so well that the hungry guest did not regret her return. The smoked aroma hit straight into the empty stomach, turning the wait for lunch into a real trial. Sig sliced the venison medium rare to preserve its juiciness as much as possible. Liliana and her mother arranged the portions on plates, completing a simple but surprisingly exquisite presentation. The table quickly filled with meat, side dishes, and drinks, so the accidental help in the forest turned into a shared feast. Liliana's mother was surprised by the luxurious treat, and Sig invited her not to be shy and start eating. All 3 began the meal, and the very first pieces made the guests freeze in amazement at the taste. Mature aroma with a light gamey note especially impressed Liliana's mother, who did not hide her delight. Liliana felt concentrated umami and maturely appreciated the depth of the smoked venison. Natural juices remained in the dense lean thigh, bursting with rich flavor with every bite. Even the boiled carrot covered with venison fat became a sweeter complement to the main dish. Fresh cabbage balanced the venison fat, allowing the meat's flavor to remain distinct until the last piece. Sig praised the vegetable garnish, which proved to be a worthy companion to his smoked dish. Liliana shyly admitted that she had grown the cabbage herself, and the praise made her work especially valuable. The shared hunting, cooking, and dinner gradually shortened the distance between Sig and Liliana's family. Even the heavy cabbage harvest became part of their new routine, as the yield was for sale and the communal table. After dinner, Liliana's mother thanked Sig for the consistently delicious smoked meat. Taking advantage of his willingness to help, Liliana timidly asked him to make one more thing for her. Sig immediately thought of a new smoked product, but this time the girl needed something completely non-food. Liliana ordered 20 arrowheads, turning the conversation back to the true craft of the blacksmith. The master suggested regrinding the old arrowheads and using their material to avoid wasting metal. Fortunately, the girl had kept the worn parts and immediately ran to bring them to work. From now on, Siga's forge supported not only Ibuki's trade, but also Liliana's family's hunting and farming. The day of the promised meeting with Ibuki came at the same time as the harvest, so Siga went to the market alone. Opening the stall, he wondered how many customers would look for smoked goods and how many would finally come for weapons. The first visitors immediately reached for the jars of delicacies, leaving the swords aside. The crowd around the food quickly grew, and the blacksmith's dream of a queue for blades again did not come true. Ibuki found the trade in full swing and immediately noticed that the entire success of the stall was again ensured by the smoked goods. Despite the many clients, Siga did not sell a single sword, which sincerely surprised his trading partner. The young man had already begun jokingly thinking about a smoked goods shop, but Ibuki asked him not to create an unnecessary competitor. Siga handed over the completed order, but the merchant's attentive gaze at the new katana caused him anxiety. Ibuki explained that the quality of the blade surpassed even the previous swords, as if the blacksmith had once again held back during the first work. Not wanting to underpay for a better product, the merchant himself raised the price of the katana to 300 gold coins. After the deal, Sig finally inquired about the fate of the sword that Ibuki had taken last time. The trader reported that the blade had already been sold, and the new owner even ordered decorative embellishments for it. The news of the instant sale stunned Sig, who had been unable to find a buyer for his own weapon for years. Ibuki credited the success to the blacksmith's skill and assured that a bad merchant could not have earned from such a good product. With a confident smile, the merchant repeated that failure with such swords would be a reason to immediately leave the profession. At the same time, the next order turned out to be significantly larger, and Sig felt the true value of his own work for the first time. While regular customers were picking up smoked goods, Ibuki laid out a whole batch of blades on the counter for further sale. Seeing the volume of work, the merchant suggested that Sig share the usual tasks with other masters or an apprentice. Sig admitted that there were neither other blacksmiths nor journeymen in his forge, because he did everything himself. Such a confession caught Ibuki by surprise and made him reassess the amount of finished weapons anew. In the Far East, even during forging, masters worked together, so Siga's solitary approach seemed incredible. The young man forged the blade himself, made the guard, handle, and sheath, although each part usually required a separate specialist. Ibuki momentarily lost his usual smile, realizing the true scale of his partner's abilities. The merchant assumed that such versatility Siga learned from his father, contrary to the Eastern tradition of craft division. In reality, Ardluck performed every stage himself and never allowed his son even to think about joint forging. Siga acknowledged his father's extraordinariness, and Ibuki understood that his own idea of mastery was again too small. Despite years of exhausting work, the young man still could not match Ardluck, whose figure remained unattainable. Ibuki noticed that independent work was naturally difficult, but this answer only touched a deeper truth. Siga explained that he endured such a pace thanks to the harsh school of the Rank S Guild, where he was taught to work to the limit. Before leaving, Ibuki recalled a strange rumor that might be connected to the blacksmith's past. The merchant did not immediately reveal details and went to verify the information, leaving Siga confused. Soon, old acquaintances appeared near the counter, who had been searching for the young man for a long time and immediately asked for help. The anxiety concerned not the travelers themselves, but their sister, because of whom the peaceful meeting instantly became serious. Sig refused to hide behind the guards, so Thor stayed by the counter while the other companion went to get the girl. The mention that they had raised their sister themselves explained their excessive care and haste. For Sora's self-defense, they chose Sig's dagger, which the older brother unhesitatingly called the best. To ensure the purchase was not in vain, the girl was promised to be immediately taught how to use the new weapon. Sora agreed to take her own dagger, and a simple purchase opened her first lesson in defense. Sora and her companion left with new daggers, and Sig finally saw his own weapon in the hands of satisfied buyers. After the first sale, more people became interested in the blades, and the counter slowly gained a blacksmith's reputation. When the market quieted down, Sig was already about to close early and replenish supplies of food and spices. His plans were interrupted by a busty stranger with 2 buns, who silently stopped by the weapons. Leaning over the counter, the woman carefully examined the katanas and immediately chose one to test. She smoothly drew the blade and took a skillful stance, showing that she knew this weapon well. Instead of assessing the balance, the stranger called the sword too exciting, completely confusing the blacksmith. The woman began to caress the bare blade with unnatural delight, and Sig lost all understanding of the situation. Her sensations resembled the imaginary undressing of a wife, while for the blacksmith this spectacle became increasingly unpleasant. Sig sharply took the katana away and accused the stranger of perverted behavior. The buyer began to beg to touch the edge at least one more time, gathering dangerous attention around the counter. So that Garland would not see the scandal, Sig agreed to show the sword under strict rules. He forbade strange sounds and grimaces before allowing the woman to take the katana again. The blushing stranger promised to restrain herself, although her excitement was already undermining this promise. Earlier, the same woman had offered to become Sig's apprentice in exchange for full control over her own body. The memory of the seriousness of her indecent condition still made the young man embarrassed. Then Sig pushed the candidate away because he did not recall agreeing to such apprenticeship rules. She insisted on her readiness to fulfill any master's wish, only increasing his suspicion. Sig explained that he accepted her not because of her body, and turned the conversation back to the real craft. The woman was made an apprentice by seriousness, love for katanas, and a sincere desire to learn how to forge them. Her strange behavior mattered little compared to the passion for weapons, which Sig could not help but notice. The blacksmith found it fascinating to master the craft together with a person who already had the necessary knowledge. After such an explanation, the candidate lost her words for a moment and looked attentively at the master. The sincere admission embarrassed her more than any order, and she quietly accepted his motives. Restoring her smile, the woman called Sig a dangerous magician, although he did not understand the reason. She hid her true reaction behind the assurance that nothing had happened, leaving the young man in doubt. At night, the apprentice politely wished good night, and Sig mentally called her eccentric again. When she left, the young man remained alone in the large room and finally managed to catch his breath. In the morning, Sig found Nene already in the kitchen, where the new apprentice confidently managed near the stove. The girl invited the master to sit down and promised that breakfast would be ready in a minute. Pancakes with bacon and cheese appeared on the table, turning the unusual combination into a homemade breakfast. Sig was surprised by the ingenuity of the dish, and Nene admitted that she used random products from the refrigerator. Since there were mostly smoked goods, the host promised to keep a stock of ordinary ingredients in the future. After breakfast, he thanked Nene for the food, and she gladly accepted the opportunity to be helpful. The thin, moist dough perfectly combined simple sweetness with salty bacon and cheese. Sig praised Nene's culinary skills, which she had acquired while cooking for others during her studies. From now on, he decided to sometimes leave the kitchen to the apprentice when the blacksmith work took all his time. Nene asked not to turn this into a daily duty, and Sig agreed not to make their life too ordinary. The girl accepted the new rules of cohabitation, although she did not yet fully understand her master's habits. Preparing to help the neighbors in the field, Sig surprised Nene also by participating in farming. The apprentice decided to go with him so as not to fall behind in all the unusual activities of the mentor. By the field, they were met by Liliana, who had already finished the morning work and immediately called Sig. Seeing an unfamiliar woman nearby, the archer became alert, and Sig explained the reason for her appearance. Nene introduced herself as the new apprentice, after which both girls cautiously greeted each other. Sig called Liliana's family his first clients after starting independently, and Nene loudly admired the master. Liliana introduced herself as a huntress and farmer, and her mother Cynthia introduced the younger Amater. The calm acquaintance convinced Sig that the sociable Nene would quickly get along with the neighbors. The family asked to prepare the soil for a new field, and Sig handed the apprentice a handmade sickle. Nene was frightened by the incredible sharpness of the tool, but the usual argument immediately made them look like an old team. Seeing the closeness of the master with the new apprentice, Liliana promised to work even harder and not fall behind them. Nene diligently loosened the new field with a hoe, turning the heavy soil into suitable ground for sowing. Liliana praised Nene's skillful work, and she sincerely thanked her for the recognition. After field work, Sig and Nene returned to the forge, where their first joint blacksmithing lesson awaited them. Sig entrusted the apprentice with forging a kitchen knife, as a familiar object was supposed to ease her learning. Nene accepted the task, and the master asked her to show her own forging method from the very beginning. While the apprentice hurried to get the tools, Sig decided to keep a separate set for her in the forge from now on. Nene filled the forge with charcoal and prepared it for lighting. Without resorting to magic, the apprentice skillfully struck a fire, immediately attracting Sig's attentive gaze. Sig silently watched Nene's work, giving her the opportunity to go through all the stages independently. Heating the iron to a red heat, Nene prepared the soft blank for hammer blows. Despite her short stature, the girl delivered extraordinarily strong blows to the metal, characteristic of her dwarven lineage. Nene treated the blank with a mixture of boric acid and borax, demonstrating a forging style different from Sig's. Alternating heating with hammer blows, the apprentice joined the metal layers and gave the future knife the desired shape. Examining the finished blade, Sig praised the shape and fire control, recognizing Nene's work as solid. At the same time, the master pointed out impurities left in the steel and insufficiently precise temperature control. Nene enthusiastically noted that Sig was already behaving like a true mentor, and embarrassed him with her own praise. Unable to hold back a smile, Sig felt that the role of teacher was gradually becoming natural to him. He admitted that he had accepted the apprentice also for the sake of conversations about blacksmithing, which he had long missed. Moved by the master's frankness, Nene promised to put all her effort into learning. The apprentice immediately asked to explain how to better remove impurities, and her seriousness convinced Sig of her ability to develop. Nene diligently noted down the instructions, not wanting to lose any important detail. Then Sig himself took up forging a kitchen knife, and the apprentice for the first time carefully watched the work of the master who was not her father. Before Nene's eyes, Sig lit the forge and began to control the flame using magic. The apprentice immediately noticed that the master maintained the necessary heat without interrupting the blacksmith's work. Stable fire control allowed Sig to fully concentrate on forging, revealing a rare technique. Under the master's gaze, the forge flared with an even powerful flame and quickly heated the metal. With tongs, Sig pulled the red-hot blank from the heat, not losing precision in his movements. He placed the heated bar on the anvil and immediately identified the spots for the future strikes. Measured hammer blows began obediently stretching the metal into a thin blade. Nene enthusiastically decided that under each blow the iron seemed to rejoice in the master's work. The strange praise embarrassed Sig, but he understood that the apprentice was speaking quite seriously. When Nene asked to reveal the secret of such craftsmanship, Sig advised her to learn to listen to the voice of the iron. The master explained that one must strike exactly where the stressed metal best accepts the blow. Nene took the image literally and decided someday to make the iron groan with pleasure, following her mentor. Sig regretted the ambiguous explanation, but the accepted apprenticeship already promised many more such conversations. Meanwhile, in the night building, a meeting was beginning that was to bring a new, unusual order to Sig. Ibuki listened to the story of a mysterious hooded guest about how she reached the city. Revealing her face, the young knight asked Ibuki to find a master capable of forging a katana for her. After 2 weeks of training, Nene absorbed the instructions so obediently that Sig involuntarily passed on much more knowledge than he had planned. Having gathered the goods, the master led the apprentice to unbelt for a usual sale and pondered the meeting with Ibuki. Near the market, Sig met Garland, who was glad to see his long-occupied friend. Noticing an unfamiliar dwarf woman, Garland heard that Nene had become Sig's apprentice. Nene energetically greeted the warrior, and he willingly agreed to continue dealing with her. After the introduction, Garland asked Sig about strange phenomena in the forest near the village of Forca. The blacksmith told about the increasing encounters with monsters, although Garland did not doubt his ability to handle them. At the open market near Sig's stall, a queue had formed even before opening, confirming his local fame. The master began teaching Nene the prices of weapons and smoked goods, while the apprentice could not imagine the real buyers of such merchandise. Having made sure that Nene remembered the prices, Sig entrusted her with the stall and announced the start of trading. The first customers eagerly ordered smoked salt, powder, and dried meat, paying no attention to the blades. Nene was stunned to realize that the entire queue had come exclusively for her master's smoked goods. Surrounded by impatient buyers, Nene quickly counted the orders and tried not to delay anyone. One client confessed to an addiction to smoked powder, causing the apprentice to doubt what the master put into the goods. Nene unmistakably named the amount to the next customer and at the same time kindly supported the conversation. Observing her, Sig noted the combination of culinary, blacksmithing, and trading skills of his new assistant. Nene rejoiced at the incredible speed of sales, while Sig did not understand why katanas and daggers again gave way to smoked goods. The master awkwardly admitted that he had displayed treats made for the soul, and they once again overshadowed his main craft. Ibuki Murasame approached the counter, and Sig introduced Nene to him as his apprentice. Realizing the scope of their cooperation, Ibuki ordered 10 kitchen knives and scissors instead of a new batch of katanas. The merchant explained that another matter would occupy the blacksmith's hands for a long time, so he did not want to overload him with orders. Nene immediately revealed that through Ibuki, a person who wanted to order their own katana had contacted Sig. The customer turned out to be Seiya Scarlet, Baroness of the Kingdom, and such news made Sig wary. Ibuki added that Seiya found the blacksmith after the incident when he saved her from an angry drunken adventurer. The mention of the troublemaker finally brought back Sig's memory of that brief skirmish. He recognized the customer as the young knight who had stood next to the defeated man at that time. Sig agreed to listen to Seiya and set off to her inn-yard, although he did not understand why the sword owner needed a katana. On the way, the blacksmith wondered how the Baroness, unknown to him, had reached the distant outskirts of Ruzelka and managed to find him. In the inn-yard, Ibuki led Sig to the backyard, where Seiya usually trained at this time. Sig found the Baroness practicing sword exercises alone, and his appearance interrupted the focused training. Seeing Ibuki the blacksmith nearby, Seiya froze in surprise. The Baroness joyfully greeted the merchant, who explained that he had accidentally found Sig and brought him along. Remembering the state of the room, Seiya hurried and rushed inside to prepare it for guests. Meanwhile, the Baroness noticed Nene and immediately remarked on her cute appearance. Behind closed doors, Seiya arranged a frantic cleaning, loudly expressing her own panic. Nene was amused by the hostess's fuss, but Sig reminded the apprentice not to mock the noble lady. After finishing the cleaning, out of breath, Seiya thanked the guests for their patient waiting. The Baroness embarrassedly warned about a small mess, although the room already looked tidy. Seiya invited everyone inside, and finally the time came to discuss her order. The guests settled in the prepared living room, where the conversation could take place without outsiders. Sig, Nene, Ibuki, and Seiya sat around the table, forming an unusual company for a blacksmith's deal. Ibuki remained the mediator and decided to accompany the agreement until its completion. Seiya officially named herself a knight of the Third Order of the Trading City and again asked the blacksmith to introduce himself. Sig apologized for his previous silence and called himself a master who forges katanas. The Baroness sincerely thanked him for the rescue, and Sig was only glad that the meeting back then did not harm her. Seiya also apologized for the unauthorized search for the blacksmith, fearing that her persistence might have been unpleasant. The seriousness and politeness of the girl surprised Sig, who in turn inquired about her long journey. Seiya explained that she first set out following the advice of a local adventurer, and then asked Ibuki to become the mediator. Despite all difficulties, the Baroness wanted to personally address Sig. Seiya finally confirmed the main request and entrusted him to forge a katana for her. Showing her usual sword, the knightess emphasized that she needed new weapons for real combat, not for decoration. In Seiya's memory, there was a single flick of a slender blade that instantly deflected a dangerous attack. Since then, the katana became a symbol of strength for the young knightess, a strength she herself had not yet felt. Seiya acknowledged her lack of combat experience and skill, hoping to face any threat with better weapons. Explaining her feelings, the Baroness patiently awaited the blacksmith's decision. Nene realized that even one witness strike of the katana completely changed Seiya's attitude toward weapons. The apprentice assured the Baroness that after becoming acquainted with Sig's mastery, other blades would no longer satisfy her, but the Baroness took the enthusiasm too personally. Confused, Seiya asked if she had offended Nene, not understanding the reason for her excessive frankness. The Baroness admitted that she considered the attempt to hide one's own weakness solely by the quality of weapons unworthy. Having listened to Seiya's self-criticism, Sig pondered the true role of the master and his creations. The blacksmith calmly contradicted her conclusion, causing the entire company to focus on his response. Not expecting disagreement, Seiya froze in surprise before Sig. Sig explained that body training and honing technique also filled weak spots, so Sei should not be ashamed of such efforts. Good equipment likewise expanded the warrior's capabilities and allowed reaching enemies who were previously unreachable. Sig emphasized that it was precisely for creating such support for others that blacksmiths worked. Sei's desire to become stronger thanks to his katana sincerely pleased the master and added personal weight to the order. The impressed Baroness admitted that she had heard such a benevolent view on her need for stronger weapons for the first time. Sig warned that the katana requires a completely different technique and would force Sei to rebuild all her usual fencing. For the sake of the dreamed blade, the knight without hesitation agreed to retrain her own body. Seeing her determination, Sig understood how much work such a young member of the Third Order had already put into training. The blacksmith accepted the order and took responsibility for the katana, but warned Sei against half-hearted dedication. The Baroness gladly agreed to the terms and expressed readiness to work together with the master. Sei stood up and extended her hand to Sig, finally sealing their agreement. A firm handshake turned the Baroness's unusual request into a true blacksmith's order. Nene was captivated by the courage of the master who took responsibility for Seiya, but Sig immediately ordered her not to develop this thought. The apprentice nevertheless compared the future acquaintance of Seiya with Sig's katana to the loss of innocence, instantly shattering the solemnity of the agreement. The ambiguous hint drove the Baroness to a feverish embarrassment as she tried to comprehend what she had heard. Observing Sig and Nene, Ibuki acknowledged their combination as remarkably complex. Soon Garland heard the alarming news about the appearance of an unknown monster in the northern forest. Examining the tracks among the trees, the warriors realized that a much more serious cause than a usual territorial dispute was behind the events.